Hello, guys.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Hey.
All right.
Hello.
Was it a little bit too complicated yesterday, or not so much? I think like rewatching, you can kind of get it better, right? It's just like explaining is a little, it's a little too many little details here and there.
Yeah.
Oh,
There were
A little bit like magic.
Yeah, it was. There were a lot of settings we never touched and we never knew they were so useful.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's the kind of stuff like as long as you're being exposed to it, to that, it's like you kind of get more curious. It's like, okay, let me do that, and then sometimes you're gonna find like, okay, Chris was being silly. There's an easier way right here. So, but it's good that you're actually getting familiar with it. That's good. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen here. Let's start this thing again. So, this is what I posted yesterday on my Instagram. Just like the only difference between those two here is basically the lighting. So that's the lighting I had yesterday during our test. I think the intensity was like 13. I increased to 14 so I could see things better. And then I just used the same light, this one here, and I reduced the intensity to like around like probably like 5 or 6, just to get a little bit more bounce. And that the rest is all an HDRI map, basically. I can even tell you what the HDRI map is. It's this one here. Let's see. This one. Sky Dome. Let's see which one is plugged in here. This one is the Abandoned Factory Canteen 4K. So that if you type this Abandoned Factory Canteen HDRI Haven, you can find it in there. And then for the main light, it's basically this one here, which is like a plane that I transform into a mesh light, and it's about 5 for the exposure right now. So it's like much lower. So yeah, so let me just get back to this. And then this one we actually had just, it's like a quick test with that texture that was just like kind of like a placehold, right? We're going to be talking about it. But also I want you guys to do something like this. For example, if you type on your Google search or whatever, for example, like albedo skin texture scan, if you do something like this, you can find like, albedo skin texture scan. You're going to find like from different sources what an albedo color map looks like when it's extracted straight like from a scan, let's say like a light stage or something like that, right? There are a couple of things that are interesting to observe. I mean, this one here seems like a pretty clean in general. This is some substance here. Let's see if I can just open this file here. Let's see, view image. So you see like, what I like about this one is that obviously they actually managed to eliminate like the specular. So this is a polarized map, right? So you basically like eliminate all the specular, but also the fact that it's a very, the illumination is very global, and they managed to eliminate a lot of the shadow as well from around the nose, for example, right? Which is very important. You're gonna see this type of stuff. For example, if you look at let's see. Let's just go back here. For example, in some other captures, you're going to notice like things baked into the map, for example, like this one, right? Everything is baked in there. So you're going to see shadows, right, everywhere. Let's see, like there are a couple of other ones I noticed. This one is a good one as well. It has a little bit of shadow, but not terrible. But this is a good example right here. It's kind of small too. Let me see if I can just go to the forum. Let's see if I can see like a bigger version of it. Probably not, huh? Yeah, but I mean, I just want you guys to see what I mean when I talk about like the albedo color not having a lot of like shadow and stuff baked into it. Because, for example, this one here, right? See, like all that stuff in there, it's like a lot of shadows all baked into the map itself. We don't want that. We want as clear as possible so we can actually, it's like paint something look correct when we render, right? There's no way to eliminate like all those shadows if you don't have like a completely global illumination, right? Like in the studio, to the point that you can actually get the light to, inside of every single cavity in there. But those examples here are cool for the main color of the skin. If you look at something like this, for example, this one is high res. Like this is a very, very cool example of a nice albedo, but I would still like eliminate, for example, like see that little line right there, like on the corner of the nose. I would eliminate that. It's still a little bit dark in there. Inside of the nostril here as well, I would probably like just put hair in there. But in general, that's the kind of stuff we're looking for. You're gonna notice around here, you have like this plain color, right? So we're gonna start with the plain color, and then we're gonna start like bringing like those values like little by little. We're gonna do like in layers, and there are a couple of things like, for example, if it's a male, right? We're gonna see there's this grayish, bluish tone around here because of the ingrown hair in there. It's like there's a beard in there. For women, we are not gonna have as much of this, right? If any, but in general, around this area in here, around the eyes, I normally make the lids themselves darker, which you can actually see in here. You're gonna see in some of those examples a little bit darker. And there are some people are gonna see even more of this. There are some blue tones in here and some greens as well around the eyes. And then there's like some magentas, there's like oranges, right? There's all kinds of tones and plenty of yellow when you get to areas, for example, or cartilage. So normal, like I go to a very, very, it's like a faded yellow, almost like white for those areas where you have like either cartilage or like a fat deposits underneath the skin. It's like, so I'm gonna use those types of tones as well. But this kind of stuff here is cool to keep on the side. For example, we have some of that as a reference, right? And then one thing I noticed when I was doing that research, when I was doing the searching here, actually there's one of my hand painted color maps that showed up in here. This one here, look at that. But this is like my hand painted one. This was like the one for Stan, right? And then there's a little bit too much veins in here and stuff. But in terms of it's like what you're gonna get once you render this, a lot of this is gonna fade away. But it's based like in the same principle. It's like trying to start with a plain color and then start introducing some of those greens and it's like magentas and stuff like that, but always like in a fractal mode as well. So basically, like I start with a very, very broad type of noise, and then I always start with a very faint kind of noise, like a big one. And then as I get smaller and smaller, I got a little bit stronger with the color until I get like to the very specific stuff, which is like those little dots, like little spots like that. Those are hand painted, right? So we're gonna approach something like this. We're gonna try to make it more realistic than that. But, and then obviously, once you have something like this as a base, we can shift the colors to create like a dark skin, or, it's like a little bit more tan skin. Like we can do that either in ZBrush by using the poly paint corrective function that I showed you guys yesterday, or we can use that node in Maya to actually help us out. So we can actually use the same exact texture and you still get like different skin tones overall, right? This one is a cool one, like some examples right here. Look at that, for like a dark skin tone, right? So it's very interesting to see that. Yeah, pretty cool. So let's start with something like that. Let's just, this one here, I wish I had a higher resolution of that one, the skin, because that's a good one. But let's see if we can find any here. So this is a hand painted in there. Yeah, I mean, like I'm gonna be painting everything. Oh, there's one like a nipple, vagina. Okay, cool. That's a good reference right there. It has everything. So let's see. So I got distracted for a second. Let's see this guy here. This guy here, I think is gonna be the best one we have for texturing XYZ, right? So it's cool that we have like kind of like it's kind of clean, right? I'm gonna just keep on the side in here, and I'm gonna refer to it when I need it. But in general, let's start something here. You see, like I have my this subtool in here, those tools. I have all my other color stuff in there, right? The roughness, the specular, everything was painted inside of this one here. The only map we didn't use other than the albedo was the subsurface scattering here. And then this map looks like this. See like some bright, kind of like a reddish, and then a lot of very orange around it. The way I did this, I basically I copied whatever color I had plugged. This was like in my previous model. I copied like the RGB values without the color correction, and then I plugged in here, and then I started to shift those values a little bit more towards pink in the ears, nose, and mouth and stuff. But I tell you, like right now, this was the only time I tried to do that, and it didn't yield a lot of it's like results. Like I could not see a lot of difference. I tell you, like, even if you don't use this anything, if you just use like a plain color, you still can get like some very realistic results, you know. But just so you know, you have the possibility, if you want to use this as your scatter or your radius in your shader, you can definitely paint different colors. But if you do, make sure that not only the hue is shifted, but also the value, you know, it's like the intensity of it. Because if you make something like this, in terms of like hue add, there's variation. There's like the yellow, orange tones and then the red ones. But in terms of the value of it, like how bright they are, it's not very different. So at the end of the day, it doesn't make like a huge difference. So keep that in mind. So this one we are probably not gonna use. But let's start with this guy here. I'm gonna just sample, so it saves me some time here to guess, right? I'm gonna just sample this color here for the color of the skin. So this is gonna be like my average color of the skin, right? This is like for a pale white skin tone, obviously, which is gonna be the base for everything else we're gonna do. So the color here, if you guys want to take notes, is something similar to this: 237, 179, and 146. It's kind of like a peachy, you know, slightly warm, but not much. So I'm gonna use that, and I'm gonna transfer that color to this guy here. What we have right now, we have this model, and then we don't have anything in terms of color just yet, right? We didn't paint anything. So what are we gonna do? Let's see if we painted anything. No, it's not there. So I'm gonna go to the highest resolution before HD, and I'm just gonna go to make sure I have my RGB on, and it's 100%. Because remember, like every time you try to use this color and then fill object in here, it's gonna take into account if you're using, like, first you have to have the RGB on, otherwise it's not gonna work. But it takes into account the intensity as well. So it's cool because sometimes if you want, for example, like if you're doing like a, let's say a fantasy character, right? And you have a color like this, and you just wanna add like 3% of blue, for example. You can just put 3%, select the color blue, go to color and then fill object. It's gonna add just a little bit, just 3% more blue, you know? So you can do that. But in this case, we wanna paint the color straight away, so it's gonna be 100%. And I'm just gonna go color, fill object, right? So let's see. Interesting, it changed the color, huh? What happened in there? Is that because of the material? Oh, I think it changed the material as well for some reason. Let me just, if you do anything that the material actually gets baked into the model itself, the way to actually reset it so the flat color works again, you can just click the M in here for material, and then you pick like the flat color. No matter what material you have, if you baked something that's weird, just select that one, and then you do color and then fill object again. So that actually flushes it. And now if I select any other material, it should work with it. You know, it basically like it just resets the whole thing. So now that's the color that I want right there. So let's see. Let's start with this color here. And then I think my material is a little bit bright in there. What I do normally, I don't paint straight away with this material. Actually, I don't paint straight away with this material here with the flat color, because I cannot see anything, right? I cannot see where the nose is or anything like that. So you can start with the material that actually shows a little bit more of that. If you want to do like a, for example, like a, I don't know, like one of those sketches here, maybe type plastic or something like that. What I do, I normally go to the skin shader, and then I just crank the ambient of it. So I select the skin shader. Let's go to material modifiers. And then I can crank my diffusing here a little bit more. And then even the ambient here, I can crank, but not to the point that it's gonna saturate too much. Let's keep it around 10, something like that. And even the specular here, I can actually reduce it, something around that. So now it's kind of like, it's a little bit more flat, right? So we have the flat color right here, and then we have the skin shader. So it's adding a little bit of it, but not too much, right? Obviously, you can always like really crank the ambient in here, but then you're gonna start introducing some other stuff in there. You're probably gonna need to tweak like the specular layers and levels and things like that. Let's try maybe a little bit brighter, maybe 15 here should work. Yeah, that should be good. So start with a color like this as a plain color, and now we can go HD, right? So Actually, I can start the paint of like the blocking the bigger forms without going HD first, and then I can switch to HD, because once I'm HD, I'm only gonna have access to parts of the model, right? So let's see how I paint those things here from the get-go. So you can start with a plain color first, and to paint like with plain color, you can just do like a regular standard with nothing here, basically like no alpha. And then everything I try to paint, I use like normally very, very low value for my RGB. But in this case here, like I mentioned yesterday, because I want you guys to be able to see so the compression doesn't destroy it, I'm probably going to have to paint things much, much darker than I would expect. And then bring things back up, just so at least you see where I'm blocking those colors, you know? So I'm going to have to do something like this, and just for the sake of you guys being able to see things, but it's going to look funky. And then hopefully you're going to be able to fix it. So you see like how I'm tweaking my coloring here? Instead of like getting a saturated color like this, I'm going towards gray, right? And most of the colors I'm going to be painting here are going to be like this. But because I have to saturate some more so you guys can see what I'm doing, I'm probably going to have to crank this more. And I'm still going to use like a low intensity for my RGB. And I'm just going to block something like, let's say like the interior of the ear in here. See, like it's a little bit darker in there. And it's a darker that's not like a vivid red, right? It's very important, guys. I mean, like I always stress this, but you know, I always manage to fail somehow because my students keep posting stuff super saturated sometimes. But basically, like, I have to stress this, like, don't use like pure super saturated color like this, especially like when you're painting lips, you know, because you end up like having something like this, and then you see the renders, and it's just like, it looks so bright and weird, you know. You compare that to something like this, which is the actual albedo right there. Like, look how much gray you have in there. It's kind of desaturated, right? Unless you're going for a, you know, it's like a obviously someone with much redder lips, you know, or a lipstick or something like that. Try to keep things a little bit more on the side of magenta, but very desaturated, you know, it's like and less on the side of the red. So like less red or orange and more magenta grayish, basically. So kind of like this, right? Like I could have gone with like a super saturated red inside of the ear, but instead I went like almost like a maroon, kind of like a brownish, because it's pretty much like the saturated red right here. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Let's get like a little bit more magenta now, like this. Not like all the way in, but a little bit more magenta. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go more a little bit more saturated so you guys can see it. But let's say like around the nose in here. Let's do like very strongly so you can see. I'm gonna make like a Santa Claus nose, right? Like kind of like the ones from Rockwell, right? So like super saturated like that. Let's start with that. Not super saturated, super like kind of like a reddish, but not saturated. My saturation is quite low, as you can tell in there. I'm gonna do the same thing for the nose. Maybe gonna use the same color. Not the nose, sorry, the lips.
Chris,
Yes.
so do could we be able to use something like layers or something? For example, if I fuck things up and I want to go back, I just have to Control C, or like in
Well,
terms of color,
that's the thing, you know. It's like the layers in ZBrush always sucked. You know, it's like I don't trust it at all, especially for painting, especially for painting colors. I mean, like with the forms, you can kind of trust it, although you cannot use it inside of HD. But with the colors, man, you cannot trust it. You know, and
yeah. Oh, sorry, Chris. I was going to say, yeah, I would not. I have problems with it all the time, especially if you have the record on. It crashes a lot.
Yeah.
Restore it, and it's just like you wipe all your poly paint out. So I agree with Chris 100%.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens around color, man. It's pretty terrible. I wish they did like a rewritten of the whole thing. But another thing that you're gonna have as a problem is that once you are in HD mode, your layer is not gonna work. So every time you need something like some adjustments, you do the adjustments on the paint itself, right? This process here, like during this whole class, it's a little bit kind of like a, let's say like a against the grain if you're talking about production. It's more like on the artistic side, I would say. So the way I see those models is basically like I'm seeing them as physical sculptures, you know? So if I'm painting a physical sculpture, I'm using like an airbrush, or I'm using like some other techniques with like very liquid kind of paint. And then if something goes wrong, what I do is basically like I just resample the main color. So I always keep like a space with the main color in there. So I can, at any time I can just like grab it. So click here, right, and grab it. And then from that point on, I just use like a very, very low intensity, and I just go over that area and blend back whatever I messed up, you know. So that way I can just like adjust things slowly. If you don't want like a pure color to just cover that area, to, you know, it's like to go back to something like this, you can use this color here, but with a spray applied to it, so you can actually get that color back, you know. But yeah, it's a little bit more of like a manual kind of labor, but yeah, man, I would not trust layers.
Hey, Chris, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
So you have now the HD mode activated. Is there a
Not yet.
specific? Not yet?
Not
okay,
yet.
so you could do basically this on Substance, for example, or Mari.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could.
Okay. Because this it has a UDIM support, and basically you're working, I guess, 8K per island.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I use those tools. Like I keep my my toolbox very, very small, right? It's basically like just Maya, ZBrush, and Photoshop. But if you guys have access to some other tools like Mari, for example, which is kind of like becoming like the standard for the industry, right? Like at ILM, they use Mari for a lot of stuff. I don't particularly use it because I do everything in ZBrush. You know, it's like I do a lot of concept stuff for work, you know, and then everything is super fast for me to paint this way. But yeah, man, like anything you can use. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can find a way to adapt all those techniques, you know.
Yeah, and Painter just added painting across UV tiles like within the last update or two.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So now it's basically Mari, but it's procedural. So
That's really cool.
Yeah, still, like I think Mari is stronger. Like the way they handle displacement.
Yeah.
Substance is still more like for games.
Yeah, definitely more game oriented for sure.
So you see, like at this point here, what I'm doing, I'm using that very same color that I started in there, and I'm actually applying to all the other areas. So this color here, if you want to see what color that is, it's like 161, 91, and 78, which is basically like it's a reddish, more desaturated, right? So you can see right there where it is. And so basically like I'm using this one just to block the nose and the lips, the eyelids, and the inside of the ears. All those areas going to be slightly darker. Sometimes the lips can be almost the same color as the rest of the skin, depending on the person. If you know, it's like sometimes have some dehydration going on as well, or the person is a smoker, like I mentioned before. You know, it's like someone has like a little bit more grayish kind of thing. So this is just like at this point, I'm not using any fancy alphas, right? It's just like the regular brush, no alphas. That's it. So intensity at 1. So it's like very easy to control if you're using a tablet, right? I can incorporate some of that color, let's say like around like right here, close to his clavicle, like the base of his neck, a little bit of that, just slightly. I can incorporate a little bit in there, you know, something like this, but not too fancy. Like the strongest color I'm gonna use right there right now. So once you have that, let's go to the next level now. So basically, like I blocked just a few colors. Let's see like some other variations now. Like, so for example, I would expect to see a little bit more of oranges around the cheeks and the forehead. So I'm gonna switch, like using the same color I have in there, just gonna switch more towards the orange here, still kind of desaturated. I'm gonna saturate a little bit more in here. And then let's just use like a plain color for now. So right around the cheeks, a little bit more orange. Let's look at the flat color right now. Now we can see where we're at. So like a little bit more orange in here.
Chris?
Yes.
Do the colors have something regarding blood flow or like in terms of like bones contact?
Yeah, that's the when I'm gonna use like the more desaturated yellows. That's gonna be in those areas, you know, with more fat tissue. I'm definitely gonna talk about when I start doing that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's the whole thing about compression, you know, it's like it's really cool that if you have a strong facial expression, right, you're going to have all this compression, let's say like in your forehead, like your eyebrows compressed, you're going to have like a furrow kind of, you know, expression in there. There are some techniques that the studios use, including ILM, which is like using some kind of like a voodoo a technique that they use that actually calculates the compression in the mesh itself and then bakes that in as a color, as an additional pass into the color map. And then
Wow.
it generates the compression on the fly. So basically, like if you have a, you know, when you see like I think I have an example right here, actually. That's a picture I took of my friend. Let's see if I have it here. That's like, it shows exactly what I'm talking about. Let's try the skin. Let's see, workshops. Let's see. Workshop, and then now let's see, portfolio. I think that's it. Our archives, and then Peli. Okay, so this is okay. This is from my friend Philip at ILM. Like I took this picture of him. So he's compressing his skin right there, and that's basically the effect that I'm talking about. You see, like where there's a strong compression. So basically, like the blood flow is kind of strangled in there, so you don't get a lot of blood flow. So you get this pale, kind of like a greenish yellow, and then the other areas you still have like the reds preserved in there. So all this thing here is created kind of like on the fly, depending of how the system is plugged in there. You know, it's like I know that at work they do something similar like this, but then if you are trying to simulate it, all you have to do is to observe how those things happen. For example, like by taking pictures of yourself or someone close to you, someone in the family, ask someone to do like a strong expression like that, take pictures, and you're gonna see like this type of like those tones changing. You know, it's like from, if it's a pale skin, you're gonna see like going from pink red to yellow greenish like that, you know. So it's pretty cool. But this kind of stuff, since we are not animating or anything, we're gonna be painting. If you need something like this in the expression, we're gonna be painting it, you know. But it's just like good to know that's there, you know. Something to keep in mind. I think like the colors I'm painting here, they're gonna be strong enough for you guys to see, even with the compression later. So I'm not gonna go too crazy, like making super saturated. I think in the past I did like some very strong greens and stuff. It didn't look a little weird, but I think at this point here, it should be strong enough for you to see. So I'm basically like introducing more color, like those very kind of like pale orange, which is turning into kind of like something a little bit brownish. So around the cheeks in here, and then the chin and the forehead. So those areas getting a little bit more of a tan in there. Normally underneath the eyebrows in here, in this area gets a little bit paler. If you're talking about like someone with a pale skin, obviously. But it gets like extra white in there, you know. It's like, I don't know if it's the eyebrows blocking, you know, serving as an umbrella in there. But especially with old people, you get this very kind of, you know, whitish tone over there. So I'm just gonna go a little bit more to the side now. It's just like, at this point, just like blocking like very, very generic colors with no noise whatsoever. Put some more here in the neck. Very, very generic. And now let's switch to subcolors a little bit more on the, you know, it's like the funky kind of colors, right? Like the greens and stuff. So around the eyes in here, I'm going to start with the color that's going to be in between like green and blue in here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of desaturate it and bring a little bit more brightness to it, but very desaturated. And I'm going to start painting this. It's going to look like makeup for now, because we're going to paint kind of, you know, strongly, so you guys can see it. And then we're going to level this down again.
Chris,
Yes.
good question. So does it change between male and female, those colors in terms of like, I don't know.
Well, I think like in general, the colors are the same. But the thing is, like, if you consider like makeup and all those other things, like the makeup, it's basically made to actually even everything out, right? So if you're talking about certain differences in tone in here, but then you're talking about someone in makeup and you're using like a base that actually is going to even everything. So I'm pretty sure like some of those blues going to go away. A lot of the, spots in the skin going to go away. There's a lot that happens in there, So yeah. So I'm gonna add a little bit more blue here around where the beard would be, but this area should be a little bit more gray than blue. But they're gonna add some blue so we can actually see this difference in color in there. And at this point here, we're gonna build just like we build the skin, right? Like it's layer by layer. We're gonna add those things that it looks weird at the beginning because it's just like a simple, it's like there's nothing interesting going on. But then slowly we're gonna start to incorporate more and more detail, right? And that kind of fractal kind of intention. So basically, like you see, like I have some strong blues in there. I don't have any like whitish or yellow tones just yet. For the around the ears in here, I can pick a tone that's similar. So I can sample, click, drag, and then select the lips in here again. I'm gonna just make this tone a little bit more saturated. So I'm gonna go more towards this and maybe a little bit more on the orange side of things. And I'm still gonna keep everything with intensity of 1. And I'm just gonna paint like around the ears in here.
Hey Chris, sorry to ask these questions again, but
no problem.
I'm doing a darker tan skin, so I'm kind of curious. Like, would you start this way and then work your way to adding more of the darker skin color? Like you did the African warrior, but that's pretty far to the right side of way darker skin, right? But what if you have one that's kind of in the middle, where they're more like olivey, or a little bit more not so dark, but still like in that realm? Like, would you approach it the same way and just kind of go darker with the base color?
Yeah, the same way. I mean, like if I show you like the reference that I used for my guy when I was modeling him was something like this. Let's see, personal projects.
I'm like, the one I'm doing is more of like a lighter skin color. He's not quite as dark. So I'm just kind of curious if you would approach it like that.
Yeah, sure. So like, when I was looking at this, I mean, like I went like, there were like skin tones that are very dark, like this one, right? Yeah. But then for the most part, I was using like a tone that was a little bit more like this. And then I went a little darker at the end. But you see, like in this case here, he has some interesting tones, right? Like in always like, you're going to see some darker tones, for example, like in the forehead, around here. The muzzle obviously has a little bit of hair in there. But you see like in areas of cartilage, for example, right here, and even like around the eyes and cheeks, the tone goes a little bit lighter. You can see that happening with those guys here. For example, you see this guy here. You see like he has this darkness around the forehead, but then here it has this very warm kind of like a chocolate tone, right? Like very warm and nice, like kind of like a lighter tone. And then in contrast with the cool, like super dark tones like that. So I would say like I would approach exactly the same. That's basically what I did. Like, I was saying yesterday, I started with something like this. And then I made sure that I was able to see all those contrasts and everything. And I treated the same way I was seeing that picture. Basically, like I would go a little bit darker, but still in the same context of this light color here. A little bit darker on the skin, and then a little bit lighter in the it's like the nose tip, and then like a eyebrow area, for example, ears, right? Like a little bit lighter. And then at the end, when I had all those things blocked in there, I just went to my poly paint, and then I adjust the colors. So I can actually bring this gamma here down, for example, and then the contrast down as well. Actually, there was I think it's HSV, this one, saturation right here. So I can bring it down, and then you can find a spot here where you get a little bit of everything you need. So for example, like if it's something more like this, maybe a little bit less contrast or more, depending on what you want. There is a saturation here. You can actually desaturate a little bit more. But the thing is, like I'm sorry, it's very noisy there, guys. If you can mute yourself, would be great. So basically around here, I would just like click apply here, right? Like if I click apply, for example, I would have something like this. Export this map, test it in a render environment that has like a, let's say like a daylight calibrated lights. So basically like let's say around like 6,000 Kelvin, right? Like for the color of the light. And then make sure that it works well with a gray model, for example, and with a model with a pale skin and everything. And then you bring this texture in there to make sure that you're not compensating, you know, because sometimes you bring a skin color that's very dark, and then you start like, well, I'm gonna just like tweak the light a little bit, and then you start actually faking things and trying to, you know, correct the color of the skin by using like light tweaks, and that's the worst, you know. It's like you have to make sure that you're always working with kind of like a light that's already calibrated for a lighter skin or just for a grayscale model. And then I would come back in here. If in my render reveal that I need a little bit more saturation than this, I would just go back to the adjust colors, you know, so I can really get the saturation in here, saturate a little bit more. And then if it needs to be darker, I would go darker, you know. It's like a combination of basically like the gamma and then the contrast in here. And also this two slides in here. And then like just like a trial and error, you know, it's like just sending back and seeing which one got closer to the reference. And at some point you're gonna get something that, yeah, it looks really close to the reference, so I can actually start painting here. And then sometimes what you can do with ZBrush, you can go to the render and you just click adjustments in here, and you can just click adjust, and you can say like, okay, let's increase the gamma in here in the viewport, right? So it goes back to something like that's, you know, visible. You can actually see what you're doing there. But you're gonna get some moire effect, you know, some stair stepping and everything, which is like comes from the saturation here. But at least you're gonna be able to see some of the stuff to add the variations, and then you just don't forget to actually go back in here and turn off, otherwise you're screwed, you know. But at this point here, I can just like undo what I did. That's fine.
Cool, thanks, Chris.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the fastest, easiest way to do, man. Like that I found, you know, it's like to do darker skin. You start with a lighter because you can see more of the skin tone variations, you know.
Yeah, I never would have thought to send it with a lighter skin first to check the render to be sure the lighting works. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one big mistake is to actually try to compensate with the lighting, man. It's like, yeah, it becomes like a wormhole, you know. It's like you get into that, and then all of a sudden, like when you switch back to a lighter skin, it's like it glows, you know. It's like something goes weird. So at this point here, let's start doing some of the noise, you know, the noise. Let's start with the big noise in here. We just did like a simple pass just with you know, blocking some colors in here. Let's get to something a little bit more interesting now, which is going to be like still not great because it's going to be a very, very broad kind of noise. But let's start with this. Let's get like a color that's a little bit in between, for example, like the color of the lips, but a little bit more on the orange side of things, and maybe a little bit lighter as well, something like that. And then if I increase the intensity here quite a lot, let's see how it looks so you can actually see. So it's still pretty desaturated. Color has to be off in here. So let's see what we have here. Let's try a little bit more saturated. Let's see what happens here. So something like this is kind of interesting, right? But you see, like my spray is very close to each other. I mean, like it's like too close. So you can actually go to your spray in here and tweak the flow. You can even do 0 here. And now you're gonna see more spread out, right? So you can see like each one of the individual little dots right there. So that's what we are looking for. We're gonna do a combination of this. I'm gonna do like an example here so you can see what I'm doing. It's gonna be very strong first. So we're gonna do like something broad like this. Let's do even stronger so you can actually see.
Chris?
Yes?
Did you make that brush?
I'm sorry?
The brush that you're using?
I'm sorry, it's so hard to
The
hear
brush you're using.
Which one? What?
Did you make the brush you're using?
Oh, no. This brush, yeah, I made this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, like it's hard for me. So yeah, I made this one, but it's actually a very simple brush. It's like you can start with the standard, right? So you start with the standard brush, just add the stroke in here, and those are the parameters I'm using. So 0.5, which is the default. The scale is the default. Just the only two tweaks you're gonna do, you're just gonna bring the color that should be at 0.5, bring to 0, because they wanna mix those two colors in here. Otherwise, ZBrush mixes them. And then the last thing is to actually bring this that comes like from 0.5 or something like that, bring all the way down to 0, right? And then for the alpha, you can pick any of those here. Let's say like a 50, for example, can be like a good one. And then nothing else. I mean, like there's nothing tweaked in here, for example. There's a tiny bit here, but it doesn't matter. I can just reset it. But yeah, that's basically, it's a very simple spray brush, basically.
There's also a paint,
Thanks.
actual paintbrush in the brushes palette. There's
Oh.
actually one that says paint that you can mess with.
Oh, in this palette here?
So in the brush palette.
Oh, in the brush palette.
No, not there. Just hit B.
Paint.
Now P. There you go.
Yeah, I never used this one. Yeah, but yeah, I never used that one. I thought that one was more like for the 2D stuff, but I guess not. But so going back here, so we are using the spray Alpha 50. So a very simple kind of thing. The only two tweaks again are going to be the color 0 and the flow at 0. And then I'm using a very large intensity here, like 44. But if I'm painting my own models, I'm going to do like a much lower than this. I just want to make sure you guys are seeing it. But imagine this, like, or look at the size of my brush in relation to the size of the face, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create like some kind of like very broad detail like this at first. Maybe get like a, let's see, like a alpha, let's try an alpha 43 here. It's a little bit smaller. Yeah, something like that. So I can start with a very, if I do it very strongly, you can see what I'm doing here. So basically, like I'm going to do the first pass going to be something like this. And then once we are in HD, slowly you're gonna go smaller with the color, with the size of the brush. So I started with a very large one. I'm gonna go smaller like this, and I'm gonna increase the intensity. And I'm gonna create another layer like this. And then I'm gonna go higher with intensity, a smaller brush, gonna be another layer like this. So it's like slowly you're gonna build up all those layers. I mean, like right now, I think I'm using like the intensity is so large that you're not gonna see a big distinction between all those colors I'm doing here. But if I do it like as I'm supposed to do, let's try with the intensity very low first and see, hoping that the compression is not going to destroy it. But for example, like right here, I'm adding like always with circular motion. Actually, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna just paint in here. And then if it's hard for you guys to see right now in the recording, what I'm going to do, I'm going to open the ZBrush, the color adjustment, and I'm just going to saturate everything so you can see exactly what I did. So basically, like I'm using like a very large brush with the alpha, like a 40 something, right? 42, 43. And then basically like a low intensity at 5 right here. So just going to go over the entire thing with the same brush. And I'm adding this very broad type of noise over the whole thing. Again, like if you're not seeing right now, soon when I switch to the adjustment and there, you're gonna be able to see it. So like very broad. And then this is I'm painting outside of HD right now because I mean like this type of stuff, I wanna have access to all parts of the model when I'm painting like this base color. Otherwise, if I'm inside of HD, remember that you cannot sculpt or paint the entire model at the same time. You have to see like chunk by chunk, right? So that's why we are doing this right here. So at least we are painting the entire thing. So.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
So since you are doing painting all of these things, does that mean the more color variations I paint, the better the final render would become?
I would say yes. In general, lines, yes. I mean, like the skin color itself. I mean, like if there's a ton of variation, it starts looking like kind of like a disease, right? But if you have something, for example, like the overall color is the same, but then you have like those tones that go a little bit warmer, and then you're gonna go a little bit cooler and a little bit lighter. You know, it's a little bit more red. but like they kind of like talk to each other. It's like they live in the same universe in here. If you go too far in terms of the distance between those values, it starts to look very weird, right? And then there's this whole thing, like an extra pass we're going to do at the very end that's going to unify the whole thing. You're going to see this when we start adding the lighter colors, because I'm going to start, like you see, I block the darker tones first, like the reddish dark tones. And then I'm going to go darker and darker in certain areas. And then at the end, I'm going to start pulling this darkness back by adding some lighter tones on top of it. But yeah, I'm going to just explore this with you guys. So check this out.
Hey, so I actually have a very dumb question. I think it might be very dumb.
Yeah.
So so since you're painting all those colors,
Mm-hmm.
On the final render, can people actually see that? Like, would they be like, oh, this area is missing some other colors, like it's not perfect, something like that.
Well, we are painting everything by hand, so someone can definitely like recognize, it's like if something is not quite there. But it's just a matter of like how much we're gonna be pushing it, right? Because I think you can do like a very realistic painting if you put enough time to it, But yeah, definitely like this is like a handmade kind of process. There is always like the possibility of using the maps, from Texture XYZ and stuff. But this is gonna be a process of us testing things and seeing what is missing for it to look realistic, and then whatever is missing, we're gonna try to add by hand, Yeah, it's a challenge for sure. I never know if it's gonna work, but at the end, always works in one way or the other, But so check this out. Let's see. So I have like just this very broad noise. That's the only thing we did so far. So now we see like I painted this a broad brush with a big kind of like round brush like this. I'm gonna go increase the intensity now to something like, let's try like a 10 or even 15. And I'm gonna go a little bit smaller now. So now I'm going to start to paint something like this. And then again, like you're probably not going to see much, but then as soon as I do this pass, I can switch back like to the color adjustment in the poly paint. So I can actually see a little bit more of what I'm doing here. And this stuff is going to look very boring in this first layers I'm adding in here, because it's just adding like the broad stuff at first until you go specific, and it starts to get more interesting when you go specific and paint the tiny little pieces of the skin in there. But this is important because everything adds depth, It's like, so if you start with those, the intention here is to add, imagine like the deeper tissues in the skin, right? Like imagine like things that are just so deep, they're very diffuse, right? They're not at the surface. So that means like like a fat tissue underneath, it's like the deeper stuff that's underneath the skin, basically. And then every time we go a little bit smaller and a little bit darker, that means that we are bringing that detail to something that's going to look like it's more in the surface of the skin. So basically what I'm doing here is just like simulating this different types of tissue from different layers of the skin, it's like by doing this way. And it normally works very well at the end, it's like when you get all those pieces together. And it's a pass that I think is very important. It's like sometimes you just focus on the very surface of the skin without doing this kind of like deeper, kind of like broader kind of noise. And I think like the model at the end misses something. It's like it misses some of the depth for sure. So right now, still kind of boring. So let's start like let's go a little bit darker. So I'm gonna go to 25 now. And obviously, when I say darker, I'm still controlling with the pressure of my tablet. So it's not something I can say like, oh, just do this and it's going to look exactly the same, because I'm actually controlling with the tablet in here. So you see now, I'm starting to add a little bit like they almost look like freckles in here. Still not very visible for you, but let me finish this pass and then definitely going to go to the adjustment there so you can see what I painted. So like, it's just like, I just want you guys to capture this, the technique itself, which is like start with very large brushes and very, very low intensity. And then as you get smaller, you get a little bit stronger with the color, basically. So that's the whole point. It's like, imagine like if you are seeing something out of focus, right? basically like the autofocus stuff is going to be very blurry and very broad. And then as you get more and more focus, it's going to get like sharper. And then the detail are going to look sharper, and you're going to see more of the noise instead of like just that broad noise from the background. You're going to see more of those details. So imagine like the small noise is actually just a detail, right? So it's getting closer and closer to the surface of the skin, basically. So let's do a little bit more here and just do a little color tweaking there for you to see what was painted so far. And I'm always painting like with circular motion. So I'm not doing like lines, you know, it's just like in circles, just like everywhere in the surface, just like circle, 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 to the point that my arms are a little tired in there. I'm having this weird thing with my shoulders, man. Like they feel super tired, and I'm having like excruciating pain. And it started with one of my shoulders. Like, so when I lift my arm, it kind of like in the morning, especially, it hurts so terribly. And then, and I thought it was like something I injured, but it turns out that the other shoulder is starting to present the same type of pain right now. So right now I'm kind of like working in here, and it's like painful right now.
Don't you think it's the position of the Cintiq? Because I'm having the same issue, and I cannot find a position that is comfortable enough for a long period of time.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I was doing this for like years, you know, it's like, and I never had anything. It was just this year that started, and it started when I was not working. Actually, it was during vacation time. So I don't know, man. It seems like I don't know if it's related to some arthritis or something, but yeah, well, my body is kind of like it's this thing that I never know what's happening. You know, it's like I have like strong allergies, and then there's like normally when there's a season where there's a lot of like pollen and stuff like that, sometimes I get this kind of weird case of it's kind of like almost like an arthritis. I have like this pain in my joints, like my finger joints, and it gets bad, and it stays bad for like a month and a half or 2 months sometimes. And then all of a sudden the season changes, and then I'm good again, you know. And it seems like my shoulders are being affected by the same period, because it's during this period that I have my problems with the fingers. And this year I didn't have any problem with my fingers, but now I'm feeling my shoulders, which is very weird. They kind of feel weak, you know.
It's called old age.
I know, dude. Yeah. It's called...
Yeah, I was gonna say, Chris, it's just part of getting old, man.
it sucks, dude. Yeah.
What part of your shoulders bothering you?
What's that?
What specific part of your shoulder is bothering you?
Oh man, it's like, I would say like it starts at the top and then rides across like basically like the deltoids, you know. Yeah, it's like it's weird.
So outside your acromion process or inside of it?
I would say outside.
That might be, you might be getting impingement.
Yeah,
what is it? Sharp pain?
It can get pretty sharp if I lift my arm. Yeah.
Yeah, you might be having some shoulder impingement issues, which is usually from internal rotation of your shoulder blade.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I was noticing, Chris, you kind of like, you keep your elbow off the ground. I used to do that for my Wacom. So I actually have like a little towel that I put underneath. And I brought my arm down. That helped a lot of my shoulder.
Oh man,
I switched from the UX21, the old one, to the new 22 wide. And that whole adjustment, I went through like a month or two of shoulder pains and everything else.
Holy shit, man.
Right position, you know, to feel comfortable again. But the pad underneath my elbow, and
yeah,
that helped a lot.
I'm gonna try to keep a little bit more horizontal after you guys said that. Let's see if that helps, because that way I can actually put my weight on my wrist. And man, yeah, it sucks.
Well, the other thing too, Chris, is if you have rounded shoulders, that's internal rotation of your shoulder, which causes that exterior impingement. There's like a really really small muscle under the like right under the acromion process between that and your bone.
Yeah.
The top head of your femur bone. And if you're pulling your shoulder too far forward and getting that rounded shoulder effect, it'll put pressure on that, and over time it'll start to wear on it.
Oh shit.
You need to be careful about that little, I forget the exact muscle, but you gotta be careful about that. So pulling your shoulders back and keeping a more proud chest out position might help your shoulders.
I actually got one of those little, I don't know how you call it. It looks like a little vest that actually you put in, you can actually tweak like the, you know, it's like those bands around the, yeah, it kind of like tights and makes you into a more like proud position. So
yeah, those are super bad for you, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah, it's super bad for you because the biggest reason why people have rounded shoulders is because their rear delts are not strong enough to pull the shoulder blade back. And also your the muscles that attach from the edge of your scapula and go forward, like the teres major, teres minor. I forget that cluster what it's called, but when those are all really weak and you tend to lean forward too much, you're weakening all those muscles, and those straps weaken them more by not doing any work. So if you want to fix that, the best way is to just do it yourself, to try to hold yourself up right more often, because I had the same problems. I was having shoulder problems, and I started to fix my rear deltoid strength and my God damn it, I can't remember the muscles, but I started fixing that strength, and my shoulder problems have kind of dissipated.
Yeah, man. I tell you, like sometimes, like when I have like some physical problems that I start like suffering with, starting to work out, you know, it's like I normally think like, oh, that's gonna hurt it even further, but sometimes the workout actually helps because it actually strengthens that area, like you're saying, you know. And then all of a sudden,
the one you bought that big machine, right?
Man, yeah, and I cannot use right now.
Do face pulls. Do you know what a face pull is?
No.
I'll send you some info, but basically you have the rope cables, right?
Yes.
The rope attachment. So what it is you're facing, you put the cable way at the top. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. You put the cable mid height, like eye height. And what you're doing is you basically have the ball ends facing your face. So you're kind of holding your hands in a vertical position, and you're pulling your arms back. I'll send you a video.
Let's talk about that after the class for sure.
yeah.
But thank you a lot, man. Like
you're welcome. Because I had a lot of physical problems, and that's one of the biggest reasons I started exercising.
I tell you, man, like it was very weird because like I was exercising my machine, it was totally fine. So I took vacation time with the kids, went to Tahoe, right? And then I came back from Tahoe, and then I wasn't exercising for another 2 weeks after that. And then I was actually trying to grab something I was getting out of the microwave, and it was, I think it was too hot, and I was about to drop the whole thing. So I yanked my arm, and then I felt that little pop, you know, it's like, and then it started hurting from that point on. And I thought that was the main source of everything. But the fact that the other arm is started a couple of weeks later, so I don't think it's related, you know. But the thing is, like, it started to happen when I was not working out at all. So I don't know.
Yeah, you could have just pulled something, and you know, as you get older, your body tries to compensate for different things. Because I have a lower back injury that my body is compensated really weird for.
Yeah.
So yeah, it shit happens like that.
So what I'm doing here, guys, I'm just like bringing it to the adjust color, so the poly paint here, and using the adjustment just to show you guys what was painted so far. You see, like just like I was saying, like you see, like there's this very broad kind of like a noise that I added in here, and then there's this a little bit smaller, and then a little bit smaller, and then you get to those little, you know, it's like dots right there. It looks kind of like a, you know, very spotty at this point. But the thing is, like, this is how it looks like right now. It's like it's very, very subtle. I mean, just contrasting for you to see the differences in coloring here. At the end, I mean, like I might want to you know, it's like saturate a little bit things, but not that much. I might add a little bit like that, maybe like with increasing the gamma, so I'm still in the same universe in there, but just a little bit more contrast, you know. But at this point here, I'm just gonna keep like painting. I'm gonna go to the HD part of things right now, and then we're gonna increase the contrast by painting things a little bit darker, and then bring some of those tones up with the color. So what I'm gonna do here, if you want to see this, I just have to remember to actually tweak this, right? But if I go with my gamma here and bring it down, you're gonna be able to see what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm gonna do this. Right? Yes.
Good question. So, two things. I got in a car accident a year ago, so I can send you certain exercises to stretch your shoulder.
Yeah.
And another thing is, how do you create the moles?
Oh, the moles?
Yeah, for example, inside right now, inside the polygrain.
Yeah, it's gonna be a combination. Like when I start to actually paint things, I'm gonna leave like moles and spots for last. But then when I start actually painting stuff around the skin, I'm gonna sculpt the moles combined with the paint at the same time. So basically, like I can sculpt and paint at the same time. I think like it's the best approach. But I mean, if you're comfortable just like sculpting the mold itself and then painting by hand, like no problem at all. You know, I just like to have like stuff painted at the same time. Just I know that the match is gonna be quite perfect. You know. So what I have right now, I have the mask like what we had before, but now it's just I'm gonna go to HD, and then we're gonna start playing with the more specific type of details, right? I'm just gonna hide everything else, and then obviously if I want to paint other stuff, I'm gonna have to go to that specific area or kind of like a blend between the two different areas and then blend them together with the colors. But I'm more focused on painting this masking here right now. So like I said before, what I can do here to cheat, I can go to render and I can click adjust, for example, and then I can bring things down. Let's say like the brightness here, for example. Let's see if it does. So something like this, bring the light, the brightness down so you can see what I'm painting. And then after, I'm just gonna go back to my zeroing here. So I'm just gonna do this for a visual aid for you guys. So I'm gonna keep doing what I was doing before, the same deal. I'm gonna keep going lighter and lighter. So we're gonna get like, let's say this color around here. Gonna get a little bit more on the red side. I don't know if it's gonna be more confusing this way, but I just wanna make sure you guys are seeing what I'm doing. You know, it's like in previous classes, it was very hard for my students to see it. So let's see. With intensity, I'm gonna go a little bit higher now, like 29 or something like that. And then I'm gonna still paint like mostly symmetrically. So I'm gonna see, I'm gonna have like those tiny little dots right now happening like this. And then all of this stuff is gonna be much more subtle once I bring this color correction from the ZBrush interface down, right? Because right now it's just cranked in here for you to see. But I just want you to see like those variations, you know, what I'm doing here. So like start big and then start getting smaller and smaller and smaller. From time to time, you can go bigger with your brush. Just incorporate like some bigger dots right there. I'm gonna go around and it's always in circles. So circle, circle, circle everywhere. That's probably not helping my shoulder either. Yeah.
It's super hard to see, Chris. Is anyone else having a hard time or is it just me?
You still not seeing, even with the contrast?
I'm kind of seeing it. Is anyone else having trouble seeing it or is it just me?
I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it too.
Might just be my computer.
Maybe the calibration of your monitor or something.
Yeah, check and make sure your brightness is up.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll figure.
So now it's starting to get like, you know, it's like because I reduced the intensity in there, the brightness of the ZBrush interface. Now everything looks a little bit more orange than I expect, but this should get a little bit more pink once I go up. It kind of doesn't make sense, but that's how ZBrush is actually treating this. So go figure. So for this area here around the lips now, that's an interesting one. For example, the tendency we have is to create this very specific line, right? Like we always see lips almost like in a cartoon kind of way. So, or like a lipstick kind of way, right? Like you look at the lips and you want to paint like that, like a very specific sharp line around the edges. But you see how diffuse it is here that I did? So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna copy that same color and I'm gonna start spraying around the edges right here. So I'm gonna add some variations. I'm gonna turn off my symmetry. And I think like it's a little bit strong. Let's try to go a little bit less strong than that. And a little bit larger as well. I want like larger, you know, kind of like random stuff in there. And then I'm gonna do the opposite thing. So I'm just blending from the lips to outside, right? And now I'm gonna grab like my, like let's pick like a color that's outside of this madness here. So something lighter like this. And then I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna blend from the outside into the lips. So a little bit lighter like this. You're gonna see like, it's kind of like eating up the edge with a little bit like some bigger dots right there. Something like that. Just like very, very it's gonna look weird in the texture like that. But then once you have like that with combined with the sculpture, that should start to work fine, you know. So let's take a look at the nose as well. Right now, we're still working on the making things darker and darker, right? Before you bring everything up with some interesting tones with the, you know, with the lighter tones. So let's go here, and I'm gonna incorporate some more smaller spots. Same deal, like a little bit stronger, a little bit redder, and then smaller. So like circle, circle. Gonna get like a lot of stuff. So that, you know, trying to capture like a depth into the skin color, basically. Like I said before, like if it's smaller and sharper, that means it's more in the surface, right? If it's like diffuse and bigger, it's probably like deeper into the skin. So I'm gonna go around here. Same thing I did for the lips. I'm gonna try to blend that reddish from the eyebrows, from the eyelids, into the skin itself. Blend. See, like the blue is starting to disappear a little bit in there because now we are covering with a lot of this color. But eventually, you're gonna bring some of that blue back. And then I also gonna add some more desaturation around the eye. So I'm gonna pick that color, and I'm gonna desaturate more towards gray. Let's do symmetrically here. A little bit more desaturated. Some blending in there. And then from time to time, if you want to level things up, so for example, like if I have a tone that's too distant from the other tones, I can always sample a lighter tone from here, for example, and then just blend with whatever I have around here. So just gonna put a little blending here. You're gonna see there's a little bit of a depth added to it as well, just by doing that. And the cool thing now, I mean, like, I think this is still gonna look very, very pale at the end if I remove like this contrast, but it's good at it. I can actually, you know, show something to you guys, but then at the end, we might go back to it and realize that everything is super desaturated, doesn't have enough contrast. And then we can go to that adjustment in the color poly paint palette and just adjust a little bit and get a little bit more contrast more towards this, but without going too crazy. We can definitely adjust that. So the cool part about this now is this magic thing that happens when you start adding the lighter tones, right? So right now you see like everything is very, very dark, right? Not dark, but monotone, right? Like there's a lot of same tones, just you know, some variations in there, but you know, it's like you don't have like a nice look in the skin just yet. Like it doesn't look like those little cells and everything. So check this out. What happens when you actually add like a very desaturated, kind of like a slightly more towards yellow and then white. So like a very, you know, kind of like bright desaturated light. So almost like white, right? So if you start adding like a small brush, let's do like in an area like this, small brush, a little spray. So this is basically like at full intensity, right? It's doing this kind of effect right here. But let's say if I do this with a smaller intensity, let's try something around like 8. Still a little bit too much, but let's do it this way. I'm gonna just use my tablet to control the pressure in here. So this kind of like little effect in here, once you start incorporating to the whole skin, it kind of like it brings like some interesting detail, you know. It mixes with those darker tones. Again, I'm gonna be using like a circular motion in here to kind of bring it to life.
Chris,
Yes.
if you did take this to Maya and then saw that the color was off, could you use a color correct node and then
Definitely. Yep.
and then find out the values and then come back here and change the paint?
ZBrush, everything in ZBrush is a little bit different from the other softwares, right? I thought about that in the past, and I think I tried to do like, for example, like, okay, the saturation I use in Maya is this much, so obviously if I bring to ZBrush and I saturate just that much, it's gonna be perfect. It was like, no, it wasn't the same result, but it gives you a ballpark, you know. It's like it's not gonna be identical, but it's kind of in the ballpark. You definitely look more arbitrary. At the end of the day, you're gonna have to find those values like manually. But yeah, it's like as a concept, you can definitely use Maya just to see at least like what you're doing. You know, it's like more like saturation or more of the, you know, it's like the brightness, something like that. And then you can actually use that to translate. But it's not a one-to-one. I wish it was, man. It would be so good. Actually, it's one thing that I always tell my students, like every single class, and I never do, right, is to actually ask you guys to put like a bunch of suggestions. You know, it's like kind of like the things that you need the most, especially after seeing this class here. Like for example, HD stuff, right? So what's needed the most in HD? Is that layers? You know what it is? Because I really need to send like a letter, like an official one, that actually collects, you know, it's like all those impressions from students actually using HD, because I think it's going to be very important for them to give some more love to HD at some point, especially like right now. I mean, like you guys are probably like we have combined with offline students about like close to 800 people now, you know, so it's a good chunk of people. If everybody came up with some like suggestions and stuff, I think we could make it kind of formal and submit that, you know, it's like and pick like the most like demanding stuff like for this type of work, and then send something on behalf of the school, you know, it's like just saying like, oh, based on, you know, it's like months of experiencing with those techniques, you know, it's like with using HD more than anybody else out there uses. I think like the students here, I think like we use HD more than a lot of people out there do. A lot of people are actually introduced to HD geometry doing this class, you know, it's like they never used before. So it would be really cool to, you know, it's like to get that, and, you know, it's like kind of like in a formal way. I think I should do probably like send an official email through the school saying like asking for suggestions, you know, it's like for specifically for the pipeline we have for this class, you know, it's like that means polypaint and HD geometry for the most part, you know, it's like what's actually missing, what would make a huge difference to help us out, you know, it's like, and I think they would really consider that stuff. I said like in some of my past classes, I mean, like patting myself on the back here, but Ofer, the guy who actually the guy who started Pixelogic, right, like the main programmer and the genius behind ZBrush, he's almost my neighbor. He lives like 15 minutes away from my house. And when I did that presentation for the summit 2018, you can watch on YouTube. I spoke to Ofer at the end because I was during the presentation, I was mentioning like HD geometry. That would be very nice if Pixelogic did something to improve it, right? So right when I was actually getting out of that big room, Ofer was right at the door, and he called me in a corner and he said like, you know, it's like when we programmed that, it was all 32 bits. And now since we moved to 64 bits, we didn't change anything on the HD side of things. So we have plenty of room to incorporate a lot of stuff and to, you know, it's like to make things much faster, for example. But we just didn't have, you know, it's like the time to do it. But he said like, if you, since we live like really close to each other, one of those days, let's get together. Like we can have dinner in my house. He lives in Tiburon. I live in San Rafael, so it's like really 15 minutes. And then bring your wife. Let's have some dinner. Let's discuss this stuff, you know. And then I was like, cool. And then the pandemic came right after, and I was like, yeah. So that didn't happen. But he's open, you know. It's like he's open to do things. So I think if we have like a good list of things, we can actually pinpoint, you know, it's like specifically, this is the stuff we need the most. I think we could make it happen, you know, it's like in the next couple of versions. So I think I'm gonna take this more seriously and send a kind of like official message and explain those things, you know, it's like the importance it is for us to get more resources for HD, because to me is like it's almost like HD should be the default in ZBrush, you know, it's like not like in the way that it is right now, because it's a little bit painful. You can only sculpt part of the model and stuff like that. But imagine if HD was part of what ZBrush is, you know, it's like to the point that all of a sudden you don't need to worry about going to 1 billion polygons. And then, you know, it's like being able to extract all this detail with speed and, you know, all this stuff, but without treating it as a second thing, you know, it's like something that's separate from ZBrush, just inside of it, but kind of separate. If it was something completely incorporated to ZBrush, would be really cool. And I think the way that he said about the 64 bits, you know, it's like it's almost like the impression I have that it would be a possibility to make things more integrated. And, you know, I even mentioned this stuff about the morph target. Why do we have only one morph target? And he said like, yeah, there's no problem. We could add more morph targets. It's like, so why is not there yet? But yeah, so it's the thing is like he has his own ideas about stuff, and the guy's a freaking genius. So when he has an idea in his head, he wants to go for that, and then he puts the stuff on the side. But it's not like he forgets, It's like I'm pretty sure he keeps the stuff like in his buffer. And there's an example I can give you is this. I first met Ofer, I think it was 2004, 2005 at the SIGGRAPH. And was the first time I saw him in person, right? Like I was in the United States for like a year or something. And I spoke to him, and I remember like having this idea. I was so excited because he was talking about like the Z spheres, right? Like back in the day and stuff. And I said like, it would be so cool if Z spheres, imagine if Z spheres were basically a brush. So you could sculpt, for example, like draw a tree with that, right? So you just like would just like click in the 3D space and just like draw a branch and then connect another branch and stuff, like basically like free form Z spheres. And he kind of like brushed that, kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, that would be cool. But didn't say much. And then nowadays you look at what Z-Sketch is and the other things we can do with it, it's like it becomes almost like that idea, just like in a different approach. So I'm pretty sure like he keeps stuff in his buffer, he doesn't, it's just like not the time to talk about certain things, but I'm pretty sure he's like, his brain is going like at 1,000% speed at this point. It's a very nice dude. I like Ofer.
So you remember a couple of summits ago, there was the Japanese guy that was there?
Which one?
Oh, I don't know. They did a lot of armor. He was saying, yeah, and he was saying he was upwards of 1 billion polygons or something like that.
Oh, really?
For the whole model.
Wow.
Do you think he was using, I wonder if he was using HD or just real geometry with
Wow, I would be surprised if he's not using HD, because with HD you can definitely have like, let's say like a couple of HD tools, HD sub tools, and then each one of them gonna have let's say like 100 or 200 million polygons in each one. But to get that just with sub tools, like regular sub tools, you have to have like 100 of them. I don't know. Yeah, because I think there is a limit, it's like you can get to maybe like 30, 40 million polygons to be safe. But then I've seen models like people going to 50, 60 million, but I think gets a little bit unstable, especially like if you're going to try to extract like maps from that, it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, I think he had it in separate tools and then brought it together.
Oh, I see. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Yeah. So at this point here, you see like I have like some of the skin in place, but it's like just adding this little lighter tone right here. I'm getting like this type. It's almost like those little specks in the skin. Kind of brings everything to life. I love using it to actually level everything up, like so everything becomes a little bit more integrated, right? So it's like just this tiny little specks like this. And then now what we can do, I'm sorry?
Is there any reason behind the fact that the lower part of the face is kind of lighter and the upper part is kind of more darker?
I would say like at this point here, I'm still working on the tones, but I can get like, for example, the chin to get a little bit darker and stuff. One thing you can always think as well is that, for example, like well, where is this character inserted in terms of like who is the character, right? And the context is very important. Sometimes, it's like when you look at someone who has like a very tan skin, right? Is that tan skin because, it's like this person is under the sun quite a lot, right? So that's going to define the quality of the wrinkles. For example, like this guy here. Let's see if I can find him. This is an old model. But Roy, this guy here, I modeled him based on a painting from James Bama a long time ago. And he has this very wrinkly face like this. And it's the kind of stuff, I mean, like this guy, he actually probably worked like under the sun quite a lot. And then his skin is completely beat up like that, right? So in terms of the context, I mean, he's still like very pale in here. I would have to go and really tan the whole thing to make it more into the context. But what I'm trying to say is that sometimes if you have someone, it's like who's going to get a lot of sun, for example, the forehead and the cheeks, probably like under the chin, you're not going to have a lot of that, right? Like under the eyebrows, not going to have a lot of the tan part. Same like when it comes like with the context of characters who practice some types of sports. For example, if you're gonna sculpt like a tennis player, right? Probably like one of the forearms is gonna be much larger than the other one, or slightly larger, something like that, because of that arm being used constantly. So it's always like the context of the character matters, you know. But in this case here, it's just a matter of me making things more even as I go. But I could use as a you know, it's like as an argument that maybe my character needs to be a little bit more tan on the upper part because of some activity, you know, or someone who wears a lot of let's say like a truck driver hat, right? Probably gonna have some areas, for example, the ear is gonna be kind of like reddish and pretty beat up by the sun, but then the rest of the face a little bit more pale. Well, there's all kinds of stuff you can do with those characters, like thinking about the context and how they act, if you know, it's like if they are like alive people. So yeah, you can trip on that a lot. So what I'm going to do here now, so around those areas of the fat deposit as I was mentioning before, right? So at this point, I'm going to switch my material to the basic material. Actually, basic, no, the one I built was the skin shader, right? This one here. So I can see a little bit more of the whole thing in the context right now, right? Still very saturated because I'm saturating my interface in here, but at least we can see a little bit of more of what's going on. So what I'm gonna do, remember when I switch my stroke here, I tweak the flow to be very small so I can see all those little spots separated. I'm just gonna bring this higher again to something around like 0.15. So if I draw now, you're gonna see something that's much closer together like this, right? I can go even like higher than this. Let's try even more dense, something like this, right? Because I want to sculpt like those, not sculpt, paint those areas where I have like the cartilage. I want to paint them with a color like this pale yellow in here, but I'm gonna go like very slowly with it. So I'm gonna start with the intensity of 6, and I'm gonna do like around this area here, just like I did with Stan Winston, right? So right around the cartilage, you're gonna get like much paler around here, and I'm gonna do this a similar thing around this area here. So where you find cartilage, I get a little bit paler, and then I can go to an area, for example, around the lips. This the whole perimeter around the lips, and make things a little bit paler as well. So I'm gonna go all the way around. So let's try to go a little bit, it's a little bit too strong. Let's try with 3 here. Yeah, still I'm gonna have to use my pressure sensitivity to do that. So basically I'm using this halo, creating this halo right around the lips in here, just to make things a little bit more pale around there. Maybe a little bit too much. And then for the eye bags in here, I'm gonna do the same thing. It's gonna go and paint them to look a little bit more pale yellow. So around here, and then I'm gonna introduce some blues as well, right? Do a little bit of blue in there. So I can do that, and then maybe around here, same thing. Gonna add some more blue in here as well. Around the forehead, let's start with this area here. I'm gonna add a little bit more brightness, this specific area here. So right against the bone itself, right? I'm gonna get a little bit brighter around here. And then underneath, gonna be brighter as well, a little bit paler. So always with this kind of like very pale type of yellow right there. It's almost white, right? It's kind of close to white right there. And making those areas more pale. So you see like, now you see like the cartilage of the nose and those areas with more variation, right? Same thing we're gonna have to do, for example, like in areas like this, like the cartilage of the ears. I'm gonna bring this stuff up right around those edges. Like imagine anything, imagine you can touch this character like as a real thing, right? Anything that feels a little bit more solid, you can actually add a little bit more of this pale yellow. And then obviously like around the edges here, we're gonna add a little bit more redness to it. But like specifically this spot right here, this spot right there, a little paler, so you can get a little bit more interesting colors. I'm gonna do a little bit of more of this halo here, probably like around here, just like in the lower part of the lips right there. So you're gonna get a little bit lighter, and perhaps a little bit here too, but this is gonna mix with a little bit more of bluish gray. So like for the muzzle area, right? Gonna have to do the same for this area here for the rest of the beard area. But in terms of, yeah, even here, for example, like this is a part where you're gonna have the bone in here. So right around here, I can make things a little bit wider, right? Something like that, even here. So any of those spots that would have like some kind of like hard surface underneath, and also the parts where you're gonna find more fat underneath, you can actually use this to bring things up. So we started to look a little bit more interesting, but still like simple overall, right? We spent just a few minutes in there. But let's talk about some other stuff. Let's do a little bit more blues around here. So for the blue, again, I'm gonna go like something between the green and blue. I'm gonna try to desaturate and keep kind of light, but not too much. So something like that. And I'm gonna introduce some of that around here. Around this area.
Christian,
yes.
Like if we say someone has a scar on the face, the scar is like an old one. It is like the wound is healed, but still the scar remains. So the skin kind of becomes quite pale. You can make out that it is different from the natural skin that we have. So how would we approach that if we are to paint that?
Yeah, I mean, like I have an example of a skin, a scar that I painted, which was for a character. Let's see if I remember which one is that. I think it's the boxer guy. Let's see. Do I have any here? Interesting. I thought it was here. But yeah, I have like the only thing I can say, like anything that's very specific, for example, like a scar, it all depends of how the scar was healed, right? Like, I mean, in this case here, I painted this one, which was actually someone who had a heart surgery, right? And in that case, for the heart surgery, I had to actually, look for pictures of that. And I remember like the center of the scar was kind of like very, very pale, like you said. And then the edges of the scar, they turn a little bit darker over time, like a kind of like a dark tone. So I was able to represent that, but just like by looking at, references and just trying to copy what I was seeing there into the paint. I don't have like a secret sauce for it. Let's see if I have any of that here somewhere. Portfolio, professional. Oh.
So sir, once I had a wound, so I get to know that
this guy here. So check this out. So when I painted like that, so I had like this kind of like very pale around there. And then it becomes a little bit more reddish, like in the edges. And then it becomes a little bit more, it's like mixed around. So it has some oranges and some pale stuff in there. But yeah, it's kind of like all from like looking at references, it's like there is no way I don't have like a formula for it.
Yeah, I seen this. This is great. Okay. Also, sir, there is this thing that once when I had a wound, the doctor told me that the portion of the wound that gets healed, it will never have sweat over it. Like your entire body, if you are like it will have sweat, but the area that has been wounded, like it is the new skin, it will never have sweat over it. So when approaching, it still has that shine, but it is a little bit different from like the actual skin that we have.
Yeah.
So that should be approached like while we are sculpting it, or while
I think you have to see like if I remember correctly. I mean, like with a big scar, right? Like the healing becomes a little bit. It's almost like a stretch, right? Like you stretch the skin, so it's a brand new skin, so it's shinier. It doesn't have the pores anymore, right? Like you have like this healing process that happened in there. So it's kind of like a thinner skin in a way in the surface. Shinier in the surface and without too much detail, right? So it's mostly like color and stuff. So you would have to actually plan that both like in the model and the texturing part of things. So you would have to plan like the displacement map to actually be obviously like don't have a lot of detail in there. Maybe some of the stretch being represented in the sculpt, but for the most part, like clean enough so that it looks a little bit kind of like a film, it's like something that is a little bit shinier overall. If you break up the surface too much, you're gonna lose that impression that there is this shininess in there, So that's how I see it approaching that. That's how I approached that guy, for example, like a simpler, surface, so he can catch more highlights in there.
Thank you so much.
Especially if it's a keloid scar, it's going to
Yeah.
be higher and harder.
Yeah, exactly. Like for the guy, like for my African warrior, it's like they are definitely like higher in general. But one thing that happened is that it was looking very, very translucent. So I was actually surprised that when I was doing that, it like in the renders, it was looking very, very translucent. So I have to actually create a map. I'm actually just going back and forth here trying to use examples because that's easier to see like visually, like explain visually. But this guy here, for example, let's say like this is kind of like a close-up here, right? And you could use some more detail in there. But originally, those guys, they look very shiny. Let's see if I can find one that's kind of like an older version. I think this one is already kind of newer, so you're not going to see it. But if I just use the same skin that I use everywhere, those guys, they got like a kind of like bright red. Those ones are starting to get a little red right there. So I actually had to copy the color of my scatter, so the radius of the scatter, from Maya into ZBrush and paint a map. And then every time I hit like a spot like that, it has a lot of volume, I actually painted darker. So basically like I kill some of the subsurface in there. Originally, this was like bright red. But then when I brought it down, it became kind of like this, so it's kind of like it's still red, but it's a much like a, more subtle effect in there. So yeah, it's like every time you do something, you have to think about like, obviously, like you start thinking about like how things would work like in the real world, but then certain things you have to actually find like a solution that works for, it's like in the context of like a digital environment, right? Something that probably is not going to be like exactly like that in the real world, but you can actually simulate by doing a few tricks here and there, But for the most part, try to stay away from too many tricks and try to, it's like emulate what you see, and then that's always a better spot to start.
Thank you, Chef.
Mm-hmm. So
Hey,
now, yes.
Sorry, I just have another similar question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just very curious that how would you make the tattoos? How would you make the textures, and also how would you make set up the shaders in for Arno?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never did a character with tattoos, but I would say like I would do like a stencil in Photoshop to start with. So I would start with the stencil in Photoshop, bring it as an alpha, like something that's very specific, very easy to apply, right? And then you start from there. Either that, or you can actually use the your how you call like the light box, right? You can use light box with the texture, and then basically like paint by using it as a stencil as well. So like you're definitely gonna need a stencil first. But the thing is like I would add this to the skin itself, because the tattoo is kind of like a deep tissue kind of thing, right? So the needle goes in, color the skin underneath, but it doesn't change, for example, the specularity of the skin and the surface. So I would still treat the skin as skin, and then I would just like paint the color in the albedo, just like I do with this one, just making sure that the edges are not super sharp, right? We're definitely going to have to add some variations in the, it's like some fading around the edges of the tattoo. And even the tattoo itself, it shouldn't be like something that's completely black. It should be like a dark tone that makes sense, that looks like a tattoo, like a little bit more faded maybe. And that's not like an even color all over the place, right? So I would do that like in this same level, It's like instead of like trying to bake some into the subsurface scattering part, I would try to do something in the albedo part of things, not the radius. But what I'm saying is that, for example, like if you have something like let's do the color shift back in here. So if you have a tattoo, you're not going to do something like this black, right? You're probably going to have to find a color that let's get the color itself and just like darken it quite a bit. And here's something like still pretty strong. Let's try that. It would have to be something like that, It's like that it has the color in there, but it's not like something that's completely black. Otherwise, the subsurface scattering is not going to even affect it. It's just going to look like a kind of like a void in there. The only tattoo I can think of that I did, it was not like a successful kind of thing just yet, but you know, it's this Asian lady here, which she has some of that in her chin, but it's not something that, you know, it's like it looks like amazing because it's very kind of, oh, this one you can barely see anyway. But this one, I think there's one angle, this one here. So it's a very, very kind of subtle effect, you know, it's like just those guys. But you see how pale it is, right? Obviously, in her case, I tried to make in a way that it looks like she was like pretty much like faded, right? Like because she's an older person. Maybe she got this tattoo when she was younger. But yeah, it's like for the most part, I don't think you can see that much. It's just a little thing like that, you know.
So there's no need to adjust the values on the other textures maps, right?
I don't think so. I think like I would paint like straight away as being a, you know, part of the color, unless you find a way, for example, to mix those colors like with a node in Maya, and then in that case you can simply, you know, it's like do the painting like you did for this guy here, and then you start another paint like duplicate your subtool, and then you can paint just like a stencil, like in a black and white texture base. Like you make everything white and then just paint this stencil in black. And then in Maya, you can combine with like, you know, it's like use one of those layer nodes, kind of like similar to the one I used yesterday to mix the displacement, and then combine both textures and export a single one. That way you can have more contrast, you know, control, and kind of like an independent control, and you can see like how far you can push back and forth. But yeah, it's many different ways we can approach that.
Thank you.
No problem. So let's go to spray, and then what color, and then alpha, I would think like 43, something like that. So right now, what we have at this point, we have the face in there. We know that everything is saturated, and we know that if I turn it off, it's going to be very pale, right? It's going to go back to the color that I was painting before. Now, one thing that you have to realize is that obviously this guy here, oh, shoot. Let me see. This guy here we were looking just now, look how pale his face is here, right? But one thing that happens, I mean, like once you have the subsurface scattering assigned to it, things tend to get a little bit warmer overall because the scatter is actually creating this warmth, right? Like the light is, you know, getting inside of the skin and then turning everything kind of like red and orange. So having the skin a little bit more pale than you imagine is a good thing, but it might be a little bit too pale in here. So in that case, I can either go to my adjust colors in here later on, right? And do that whole thing, like with the, you know, bring down the gamma, maybe like the contrast a little bit, you know, or you can actually, you know, contrast a little bit more. Look how cool it looks. Ooh, you can actually see the detail right there. Look, all that stuff that we painted, you cannot see anything in there. So that's kind of cool. But all of those adjustments you can also do inside of Maya with that adjustment node, right? So for now, we're just gonna keep painting those things here and using this render adjustment with brightness at kind of like minus 0.45. So I can actually see what I'm doing, and you guys can see what I'm doing too. And I'm just gonna add some of those spots, and then some of the specific spots now, and then some veins so you can see how I do it. But I hope you guys got like the concept of how things start like very broad, just like with the sculpture, right? Very broad detail, very pale detail, and then gets smaller and smaller and stronger. And then once you have all the darker tones in place, then you get like a small brush again, like a small spray brush. And then you use a very, very desaturated and light yellow like this, almost white. And then you can start bringing things up, you know, it's like with, you know, it's like to look for those tiny little details in the skin. For example, like all this stuff here, if I do very strongly, you can see it, right? Kind of like a little pass that's going to bring the skin to life overall. It's almost like you get like those kind of like bright spots. Is almost like bringing those different little cells in there, you know, or maybe like a simulation of the specular hitting them or something like that. So this combined with the specular itself that we're going to be adding to the skin, it should produce a good effect, you know. Now for the lips, we didn't touch too much in here. For the lips, there's a couple of things we can do. We can desaturate some more. So get like this upper area here, this whole area around actually. I'm gonna desaturate some more. Let's get a little bit lighter and more desaturated. So around here, we're gonna get a little paler and grayer. And then sometimes you're gonna find out that like the internal part of the lips, it gets more saturated. It all depends, obviously. I'm just like getting like some averages of stuff I've seen here and yanking it. But so if I pick this color right in here, I can actually go down and then get a little bit more magenta overall. So I'm gonna go a little bit darker and more magenta. And maybe a little bit more saturated too. Let's see, more magenta. And then let's saturate this area right here. So it's gonna get a little bit darker right in the inner part. Down there. And then slowly you're gonna get a little bit more interesting forms, you know, it's like it's, everything is built just like with our sculpture. It's like it has to have enough contrast, but it has to live in the same universe, you know, otherwise start to look a little bit weird. That area, for example, like for the cartilage in here and the eyebrows, it looks a little strong right now, in my opinion. But then remember that with subsurface scattering, everything's gonna even out a little bit. And then on top of that, this is very saturated right now because of my screen, but everything's gonna get a little bit less saturated once we have everything in place. So now that I have that, let's talk about like the veins, for example. And the veins, I'm gonna use like micro veins, right? Let's see if I can find it here. So I have these veins here. So this guy here, look at this brush. I didn't paint that by hand. What I did, I actually searched the interwebs for lightning. And then if you look for lightning, you're probably gonna find this map somewhere in there. And it's kind of like it's cool because it's like a very black, like night sky. And those lightning rays in there, like super bright. So I was able to actually bring this to Photoshop and then just like save it and transform it to an alpha, right? So now that we have the alpha, the interesting thing is this, check this out. So you see like, as I paint with them, I'm actually sculpting as well. So this one is very useful when we start sculpting eyes. We're gonna be talking about this tomorrow. But in this case here, if it's just the skin, I'm gonna turn it off, right? Because imagine that, let's switch materials in here. So something you can actually see, let's see, this is gonna be hard to see, skin shader. So imagine like if I get like a color, like a dark red, it's gonna be too red, but at least we're gonna be able to see it. So if I do something like this, right? And I actually go and switch here my material off, yeah, it's gonna be hard to see, but yeah, right there. So you see like it's actually adding the volume, right? This is what we need to do when we are doing like eyes, for example, the eyeballs, right? We're gonna be adding the veins. As we paint, we're gonna be sculpting at the same time. But in this case here, I'm gonna turn it off. I'm gonna turn off the add. I'm gonna keep just the RGB part. And let's switch to, is that the material? Oh, okay. Oh, why is the skin? Oh, okay, it's just the angle in there was kind of funny. Okay, so now if I get like a color like this, I'm gonna have to go a little bit more, a little bit darker for me to be able to see it, but this is too dark. So let's try to go like intensity, maybe like 20, see if it's too much. Actually kind of good. So those little veins, I normally use them around this area here for the nose. I'm gonna do symmetrically at first because a lot of them are gonna repeat. Maybe a little bit more saturation and maybe a little bit more pressure as well. So I'm gonna do some of them by dragging, like you see, like I have like this kind of like direction, right? Like, so that's the root is on this side here. So basically I can drop the root right there in that corner and just drag them. And make sure that when you do it, you kind of like cross them a little bit so they don't look like the same pattern all over the place, right? So kind of like just like try to do in a way that it looks more interesting. Sometimes you're gonna get some of them right at the tip here. I'm gonna put a few of them. It all depends of the age of the person, the skin type, right? Sometimes you're not gonna see any of this, but I can.
All the wine they drink.
All the wine, exactly. Like, especially those guys like Spanish dude and you know, painters, right? It's funny like to see those guys like the French painters back in the day, like the Impressionists, right? Like Toulouse-Lautrec and all those guys. They're like full on like absinthe. Those guys would go crazy, man. Like absinthe back in the day when they drank that, it was like 90 something percent alcohol. It was like people would go blind with that shit, man. And then there's something else that was mixed in it that would cause like a kind of like hallucinations, right? People would kind of like hallucinate on that shit. So imagine that, man. All those guys, like, it's like sitting on those tables, drinking,
like LSD and turpentine.
Yeah. And thinking about like talking about like art and painting all this stuff and completely out of their minds. So it's interesting. I'm the squarest person you're gonna ever meet, man. I never done like any drug or anything. I did some alcohol, yeah, got drunk a few times, but after they got my gallbladder out, I don't even drink anymore. So yeah, I tell my friends, it's like I had like plenty of friends who did all kinds of stuff, like from acid and mushrooms and all kinds of stuff, and I said, it's like I'm crazy enough without any of that stuff. In fact, I had like an interesting experience I'm gonna share with you guys. That a friend of mine, he said, dude, I had that experience, but I had to be very high on shrooms to actually have that experience, and you did it without it. I was like, yep, that's right. So I was actually doing Zazen for a while, right? Like my Zen meditation back in 2002, I believe. And I was actually pretty deep into it. It's like I got really good at like following to like deep meditation, like within just like a few minutes. Like it wouldn't take long for me to go really deep. And so I was actually sitting at the table with my ex-wife at some point, like in about to have lunch in this shopping mall in Brazil. And then I was talking to her, and all of a sudden, man, this was like after, a couple of years doing Zazen, all of a sudden, like I felt like I stepped inside of my body. Basically, like it's almost like I did like I did like 2 steps back, and I inside of my eyes, basically like the eyes became like 2 windows. And then I was observing the whole scene, observing myself talking to my wife from the inside of my head. So basically, like, it's almost like I walked 2 steps back, sit in a corner, and I was watching myself talking to my wife. And the thing is, like, I definitely became a third person, I was like, which is very weird. So I was my consciousness actually was acting and interacting with my ex-wife, like talking to her normally, but I was at the same time a third person observing the whole scene. And I mentioned that to my friend, and he said, dude, I had the experience like to become a third person, but I was high on shrooms like shit. I was like, yeah. And the thing is, like, this happened twice to me, like in different situations with her. It was right when I was doing a lot of meditation stuff, and I never had that again. I mean, like I'm not doing meditation either. So, but interesting, it's like it's kind of like a humbling thing, because after that, I started talking to my friend who actually did Zazen, and he was like 55 years old. And he said, I never had anything like that, dude. You just start doing, you're already having this cool experience. And I said, like, it's funny because I'm starting to look at people in cars, for example, driving to work, and I can see them like a bunch of like just meat, just like walking and talking and driving meat. Because at the end of the day, that's kind of what it became, it's like looking at this as basically like just a box, a talking box, but it's almost like consciousness is deeper than that. It's like something that some people believe that lives on, and I don't know, because I never died to know, but it's interesting to think about that. It's like that we are just a box. It's like that's my impression I had when I saw my mom when she was dead, like in in her coffin, and I was looking at her. And I was like the saddest moment ever in my life. And I look at her, and she was not there. It's like, was this empty box that looked like her, but her essence was not there anymore. So it's this weird kind of conflict. And yeah, I still think about that. It's like to this day, like, it's like, if this that we are doing here, like, is this really like the biggest part of life, or the biggest part of life happens after we are gone from this? And kind of like, back to a source or something like that, where, there is no thought process. Everything just is, it's like in its purest form. So I don't know, man. I like tripping about this stuff, you know. It's like, and that's why I don't need drugs. I'm already.
That's why I wonder about cemeteries.
Uh-huh.
Like, people go to visit cemeteries, and I'm like, but nobody's home.
Yeah, exactly. Just boxes, man. Just empty shells. I mean, like just like you get like an empty shell at the beach, right? Like the little creature is not there anymore. It's just a shell. That's how I see bodies, you know. So yeah, it's funny this whole thing we have like this fascination with the way we look, the way we, you know, all this stuff, and all of a sudden like you're gone, you know. It's like and all of that is just like, you know, was that the most important part of your life? That you know, if that was the most important part of your life, then you're in trouble. There are other important things to think about.
Hey, I want to be the prettiest empty shell, Chris.
Oh yeah, no.
Not crushing my dream.
Dude, I tell you, dude, you cannot surf your life just on your good looks, you know. You have to stop that already. You know?
Chris, sir.
I know.
Like me, for example, like people think like, oh, Chris, like he's a talent. No, I slept my way up. That's how I did it, you know.
Yeah, Chris, sir, that experience that you just spoke about.
Yeah.
I think that's the path to enlightenment, sir.
Oh, really?
Because yeah, it is, because you know my family, they're too much into like mythology and meditation and stuff.
Yeah.
And this thing, the experience that you just spoke, I'm probably too young to speak about it, but this thing happened to me like twice or thrice, and I mean, you might be knowing. You share his name. You know about Jiddu Krishnamurti?
Oh yeah.
I think I heard you saying you were named after him. Right? That's. Yes, sir. Sorry.
Like my name is Krishnamurti because my father. I mean, like he had this chronic problem with his heart, so he knew he would die young. Because back in the 70s, they didn't have like a heart surgery that was effective for that kind of stuff, for the, you know, it's like the rheumatic fever that he had. So he got into all kinds of philosophies, right? Like, and he got really deep into Hindu philosophy. So he fell in love with the Jiddu Krishnamurti that you're mentioning. And then he actually picked that name for me. My name is Krishnamurti, not Jiddu, but, and then left that as basically like, you know, he told my mom, you know, it's like, you know, if something happens to me, I want this kid to be named Krishnamurti, you know. That's how I got the name.
I've listened to his lessons. He's like one of the greatest philosophers, the saints, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
He was raised to be the next Buddha.
Yes.
But the thing is that when they presented him to the world, they wanted him to be like the world leader. And the first word that he spoke was that I am no leader. And that was quite fascinating because he saw through all the lies. He was enlightened.
Yeah.
But, you know, he was forced into it. That the process that should have been very subtle, he was forced into it. So
he was like a prodigy, right? Like when he was like 10, 11 years old, he would go and talk like in circles with the wise men in his community. He would be kind of like talking at the same level, you know. It's like he was a very like precocious kind of guy. And but check this out, man. The Krishnamurti we know is the guy from the books, right? And this philosopher and this amazing mind, you know. It's like you can actually watch, which is fascinating. You can watch his talks on YouTube. There's a bunch of them, and they're very fascinating. Actually, my father never had the chance to see that, and now me as an adult, you know, I can actually see him in person talking all this stuff. It's really cool. But the side that we don't know about Krishnamurti, which is very interesting, there's a guy who works at ILM, used to work at ILM. His name is Mark Siegel. And Mark Siegel, if you look at his IMDb, he's like the guy who actually sculpted some of the Ghostbusters characters, like back in the day, like practical models and everything. So he has this long history of working like in blockbusters for the movie industry. You know, it's like practical stuff. He's a sculptor. And Mark is the sweetest guy. So from time to time, he would show up at ILM, and ILM would hire him temporarily, just like for a project or something. So he would get that money, and then he would travel to France to be with his brother. He lives in France. But Mark, one day I was having lunch with him because he was around, and he said like we started talking about Krishnamurti, and he said like, man, I have some stories to tell you about Krishnamurti. I was like, really? What kind of stories? I was like, well, at some point he was in San Francisco for a little while, right? So he came over here, and then he actually, like a friend of his actually was kind of buddies with Krishnamurti. And one thing that people don't know about him, seems like he was into like driving fast cars. It was like, dude, that little Indian guy, and all stuff. Like, yep, he was into driving fast cars. So he was talking about some of his adventures, like driving fast in a freeway or something, it was like with his friend. I was like, seriously, man, it's the same guy. I was like, yep, that's Sridhar Krishna. Like, man, that's so amazing. So I never heard anything like that, because it's just this idea about this philosopher, it's like this guy was like, yeah, the guy was human too, and he had his own little fascinations with stuff, which is kind of cool to see always like the human part of humans, Very interesting. So what I'm doing right here is just like, see this brush I have is a standard brush. I have my stroke in there, and I'm using this alpha here, which is like this alpha number 15, right? And I think I tweaked it a little bit. Let's see. No, actually it's the default. And then what I'm using is just like a intensity at 5 and a kind of like a dark tone like that, just to add this little dots, It's like, if you add too many of them the same size, they kind of like don't work quite well. So I'm going to make things bigger here, and I'm going to go smaller, and I'm going to try to introduce some bigger versions of those little spots. So important to have more variations, right? We didn't do much variation with the skin just yet, like in terms of adding more pimples and stuff. But this is going to be the same deal, It's like the same way I'm doing with the colors in here, adding those bigger spots. And then I call it liver spots, right? The ones we added, like especially on the sides of the face. Like when you get older, you're going to get those liver spots around here. So you're going to get some bigger ones kind of showing like that. So sometimes you can do a little, stronger, obviously. I don't think he's kind of like a too old of a guy in here, so I'm not going to go too crazy with it. And then I'm trying to add those little spots like a little bit more randomly and also asymmetrically, right? I'm going to try to avoid too many of them around the eyelids right there. But like those ones, they kind of manifest a lot, like close to the lips, right? Sometimes. And then neck, you're going to have plenty of them. Forehead, you're going to have like some of them as well. So just going to go like and add some of them, because they actually help with this impression of real skin, It's like just adding some of them and trying to add like with different sizes, like I said. Try not to get too symmetrical with them. If I do symmetrical, maybe I'll add a little closer one in there. So some closer, some distant, anything to look a little bit more natural. So just like a few ones here and there. But we need to render this to see something, and we are kind of like almost out of time. So I'm going to just stop what I'm doing. I'm going to export this straight away, and we're going to tweak this map for now inside of Maya, right? The veins that I showed you guys before, this little veins that I was adding to the nose in here, see right there. All of them, they're going to kind of fade away a little bit when you render, but I normally add them as well around the eyelids. So like around the lids in here, see, you can add some of them like that, and close to this area here, right at the edge of the lid, you can add some of them. All of that, like it's just tiny little details that if you start thinking too much about it, like oh, this is not going to show in the renders. Oh, this is not, you end up like not doing it, and then something is missing when you render, So it's the kind of detail that's almost like it doesn't mean much when you're doing it, kind of like, oh, I don't know if it's going to even show or something. But that little subtlety is what actually, makes your character different from other characters. It's like, it's the little tiny details. Not just for the sake of detail, but for the sake of trying to bring life to the character. It's like, it's not like a show-off kind of thing. It's just, it's part of the process. So
we had the Z-add off for this one. Should we be, or it's...
I'm sorry?
When you painted the veins across the eyes, we had the Z-add off, like we only had the RGB.
RGB, just this one here?
Yeah, we should not put the Z-add, we should off it, because while you did it on the nose, we had the Z-add also on.
Actually, I had with the nose, I did with the on, just to show you how I sculpt, like, for example, like for the eyeballs. But then I said, like, for the skin itself, I'm going to turn it off. So I turned it off.
Okay, sir, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. But for tomorrow, when you do the eyeballs, we're going to definitely have them on at the same time. So right now the skin looks okay. Now, obviously, when I switch this to here now, it's going to look very, very desaturated and pale, right? But we're going to play with this inside of Maya and see what we can get with it. So you see, like, I got out of HD, so it doesn't look like it has any detail at all, right? But that's the way it works. I don't have to do like create a morph target or anything, because I'm only exporting the color map. So all I'm going to do here is just like save my project, because I don't want to lose anything that we did today. And then I'm going to export the color map straight away. So let's just save this once, 18. And we're going to do a test, and hopefully you're going to make it look better than it was before, which is this little map that we had in there. It's kind of like a temporary. But obviously, we just spent like it's an hour, but it's not really an hour, right? I spend like most of the time talking and explaining other things and using examples and stuff. So sculpting and painting itself, let's call it like 25 to 30 minutes or something like that we did. So let's see. So this is basically what we have as a benchmarking there. So we're going to keep this one on the side. Definitely going to look different, right? Because it's a different, texture altogether. But let's bring this one here. Let's export it first. So ZBrush, very easy, right? Don't need to save any morph target. Just go straight to your plugin. Actually, let's just rename the subtool first. I'm going to call it albedo. I don't know the number now. Let's try 4. So plugin, turn off, turn on texture. And that's going to be 496. Actually, I can try with the 8Ks because it shouldn't be too bad. Don't need switch morph target in this case here. It's just color map. So create alpha. I have to actually double check if it's going to make a huge difference using 4K or 8K. It might not even do much, So 4K probably going to be fine, but I'm doing 8K. Actually, screw it. Let's do 4K. Sorry, I'm flip-flopping here. Let's do 4K so it's a little bit faster for export. So the way to export the painting from HD is the same thing. Get out of HD, just export the texture maps, and then ZBrush is going to find what's in HD. See, creating texture from HD paint. So found the first one. It's making the second one right now. And look how fast it does that too. Definitely is going to be more slower than see, it broke. So something went wrong right there. See, it's exporting everything black right now. It messed up. So I'm glad I actually saved that file before I did export. I'm going to just reset my ZBrush. If you see your maps, for example, changing color to black like it happened in there, that means that the file was corrupted already. In that case, that's a no-no. So let's just open this one again. Let's see. That's why I'm mentioning, I was like, I don't want to lose anything here. That's why I'm going to save it. Because that happens, man. It happens with the displacement stuff as well, So let's
Excuse me,
Yes.
Chris.
Yeah.
I've been actually having that problem where all my displacements are black. When you say that the file's corrupt, does that mean the whole Z like project or ZTL or?
No, getting maps to look black, the displacement maps is normal because you're actually you're exporting in 32-bit maps.
Yeah.
And they should look kind of black, it's like at the end. But in this case here, it flipped like from color to black in the middle of the process. And then I can tell that something went wrong in there. I'm just going to rename this one to albedo 5. It should work now. Yeah, you're going to notice right here when exporting the textures, it was like color before and then switched to black. But when you're exporting displacement maps, it should look black because it's like the base level it's basically black. But if you get that same map like into Photoshop, for example, and you put like an exposure node in there, you're definitely going to see the map like popping, So let's see this source images. So you see like you started like a color, and then black and white. So very weird. So that's not what we want for sure. So let's try that, then save it again. So let's look around here. So let's see texture. So that looked correct. Second one looks correct. This one is the one that broke before. So that looks correct now. 2 more. That's correct. And the last one is correct. So that's the reason I tell you guys, before you export any maps, it can be color maps or displacement, save your file, and because ZBrush does this thing, sometimes the multi-map exporter is nothing more than a script. So it's basically like using the internal functions and just like automating the whole thing. And it's not like it has no way like actually to contain like memory leaks and stuff like that. It's like I think it's just like it's kind of like it's not quite a plugin. It's more like a script that was turned into a plugin. So for the color here, let's look at the shader network. And we're gonna do like a quick render because we just like right around that time. I normally end like right on the dot at 10, but this specific class we are going like beyond that for quite a bit. But I don't mind. I mean, like we're having fun too. See graph. So I'm gonna find out where the color is here, which is the albedo. So I have the albedo 2 in here, right? That's the one that's plugged to the color correct node. So basically that's the one I'm gonna switch. So I'm gonna click this node here. I'm gonna switch to my albedo 5. It should pop right here. It's not showing, but anyway, it's gonna work. So I bring it there. So like 5 nodes, I found 5 different nodes. Let's see if I can go back to my original camera. I think it was around here, which kind of matches this one. Let's just do this. Let's just maximize this. This one is already saved in there. Let's render straight away and see what kind of difference we get. If it's going to be much paler, or let's try like a smaller part, like maybe like around here. If it's too pale, that means that the color correction node, we are probably, let's see, I think let me just turn this thing on here, the progressive render. Okay. So you can actually see the render on the fly. Remember like at the very beginning when I was just like playing with those values, I actually tweaked my color correction node and made things a little bit more desaturated and brighter. So I think I'm gonna have to bring it back a little bit. But in terms of the detail, I can see like the veins in there already kind of like starting to show. Definitely there's a little bit more blue around that area, which I like better now. But under this lighting setup, we might not be able to see a lot of it, but let's just tweak this a little bit. So same way we did yesterday. So if I go back like one level in here, now I'm back to that color correction node, right? So the hue shift I'm gonna put back to 0. The saturation, let's do it at 1 in here, which is like the default that's coming from ZBrush. And then the gamma, let's see if it's too much if I do a 1 here. It's gonna get too dark or not. It looks good actually. So I basically like reset everything. I'm not using any color correction at this point. Everything came straight from ZBrush, right? So compared to this one here, it's definitely like a paler version of it. So in his case, I mean, like since he's gonna be like probably like a browner kind of skin, I can actually maybe like reduce to this, like the gamma itself, right? I get to a tone that's a little bit darker like this. So it's not like that kind of like super pale kind of tone. So I can definitely use this color correction node right inside of Maya to do it. But I mean, like as Wes was suggesting, I mean, like what you can try to do is to get like, okay, so I started with 1 and then I brought the gamma down to 0.8 in here, right? So maybe you can try to, to do the same thing around here. Let's say you go to the highest subdivision level and then you go to your poly paint in there, go to your adjust colors. And then the gamma you can try here. I mean, like it goes from, let's see, from 0 to 1, maybe like at 0.8 in here. At least like if this was like spot on with what Maya is doing, that would be the setting right here. And then it would just press OK. That would actually make the entire thing a little darker, and it should propagate to the highest levels as well. It's like to the HD stuff. But in general lines, I think like this is a good start right here because I'm starting to see some of the richer tones coming through. It's like there's definitely a little bit more blue around that area than we had in this case here, right? Everything was kind of pink. So definitely like richer in there. It has some little veins right at the tip right here, starting to render right there. And overall, it has a little bit more of those little spots as well, right? So let's try to cancel this one. Let's just save, do a quick last render here from a slightly different angle, maybe like an angle that has more shadow, something like that. And then a little bit more from a distance so we can have a general idea about the, how it looks like in the render. Let's try bring this back here. Something like this. Let's see how it looks like. Did I save that one? Yes, I did. So let's just do this one. Talking about being an empty box, right? In a shell, look at this guy. Where is his soul, right? So far, he's just a box. We have to put the soul in there.
No eyes, no soul.
Yeah, exactly. He almost looks like a politician. See what I did there?
Skin puppet.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, those freaking puppets.
Tell
They
them
all,
not to
they,
do-
they all have the same masters, man. I swear to God. They all follow the same instructions. Anyway. Okay, so let's take a look at this. I think it's gonna look cool, man. Like just for this fast pass that we did today, I think it's gonna be it's gonna work okay. It's just a matter of like once you have the variations and things in place, like finding those tones is always like the trick, right? Like you said, like for the dark skin, let's say like for a tan skin, and then anything in between, you know, it's like it's the trickiest part. And on top of that, I mean, like you see something like this, right? And then you realize that, okay, so that looks pretty cool and all, but it's pretty orangey and you know, very, very warm in there overall. But if you guys ever watched like, you know, like painting restorations, oh my God, man, it's like night and day. Like the original colors are very, very bright. I was surprised to see, I think it was a Caravaggio I saw restored, and I saw it live, man. And I was like, oh my God, the colors were screaming at me. Imagine like back in the day, they didn't have like commercial paints, right? Like it was all like handmade with natural stuff, like pieces of rock, right? Like different types of rocks and then dirt and you know, plants, whatever they could get a hold and like mix and make their own pigments and everything, right? And those things, man, they're like so freaking live. I remember like seeing Caravaggio paintings like in books, and then I saw one in live. It was like the colors were screaming at me. It almost like look a little bit cheesy, you know, because like the pinks are like super saturated and stuff. And I was really impressed. So yeah, that's what happens, you know, it's like when they remove this old varnish, you know, let's see, restored.
I wonder though that, you know, varnish is yellow to begin with.
Yeah.
I wonder if they made the paint super bright to compensate for the yellow in the varnish.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. My favorite restoration ever made was this one here. That's amazing. This one's this was it was news for a while, man. It was like this was an old lady. She's like, oh, I know how to restore. I was like, seriously? Yeah. I don't know how she got the job, man, but that was real. She actually transformed that into this. It was amazing.
Perfection.
There's a sculpture
there she is, that lady.
She looks like it.
He's the one who started the whole
portrait.
That was actually the original right here. Like she had to restore this one, and then she was like, "I know how to do it. Let me just put like you know, I have to finish cooking my eggs in here, but then once I'm done, I'm gonna just go there and finish it up." Like, oh, cool.
That's a self-portrait. Yeah.
Holy shit, man! And then the recent one was the one that's my profile on Facebook right now. I don't know if you saw this, but my Facebook profile is actually someone did the same with the sculpture. So look at my profile. It looks like
that
this.
one, yeah.
Yeah. So someone, man, got this sculpture.
No
kind of like a classical sculpture. Like, oh, I gotta. Dude, this was like on purpose. It was destroyed on purpose. Nobody can do that, man. I mean, like,
they do this stuff and they call it modern art or something.
Yeah, I think like I don't know, man. What's the deal? But let's see. Before, let's see. Before.
There was no budget.
After.
You worked for exposure.
Right. Oh man.
Wow.
Oh,
that
shit.
lady is so funny.
Oh no, that's like a painting.
Artstation? What the hell?
Let's see, painting. Let's see, classical. Let's see.
She was just a parishioner too.
Yeah. Oh, there's some bad ones here too. Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
Oh man, I didn't know it was that bad. But those ones are cool, man. There is a guy who posts those videos. Oh, this is the before and after. That was the sculpture before, and that's after. There's some people actually post images of this. For example, like the restoration. Look at that, removing the old varnish. Look at the colors behind it. That's why, like when I look at something like this, that's very yellow. I have the impression that the colors, like the tones of the skin, can be probably like much more pink than what we see here. You know.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm counting on at this point. So that's why I'm going to go.
A lot of these are coming from Spain.
What's
Look
that?
at Bob Ross.
Bob
A lot
Ross.
of these are coming from Spain.
I know, right? Like they have this gift to create like amazing pieces and the same gift to destroy them all. It's amazing. Yeah. Anyway, guys, I think that's basically like it's a starting point. I mean, like everything that I'm going to be using to refine this color paint is going to be using the same techniques, always the same stuff. Start with broad things and get smaller and smaller. Those little dots in here, like little spots, are still a little bit too spread out and too dark. Some of them are going to be adding, going to be kind of like more reddish and with different sizes too. You know, it's like put some redder ones in different sizes, and you know, it's like a little bit bigger here and there. The skin is still too even. I can still see this renders with the pores being too much of a pattern at this point. That's what that's because I don't have a lot of the skin variation and micro wrinkles trying to mix things up a little bit. But eventually we're gonna get all this stuff like dialed in. You know, the important part is always like the way I insist to you guys to create like a basic scene with some lighting and everything, so we can actually iterate on that. You know, it's like you can actually little by little, like we did with the skin yesterday. I started with the skin from scratch basically, and then we plugged one by one, tweaked a few settings, right? And then we had at the end of the day a skin that you know, was fairly decent. But now with this different coloring here, I think we're gonna get things a little bit richer overall. You know, so yeah, that's all part of the process. The important thing is like don't stop. You know, it's like and keep exercising in there. It's important.
It's just amazing.
Oh, look at this. So
Yes.
sRGB aces, right? So this is the one I was using before. Look how much more saturated it is, right? And then now I'm using this P3 D60 here, which I like better. You know, it's like it has this kind of like a lighter overall tone. But obviously, if I want to tweak this into something more interesting, I can actually use Photoshop as well. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you is this. Let me give you this as an additional tip in here, and then I'm going to close the bar. So to export this into Photoshop, to make sure that you get the same result you're seeing here as an EXR, can be very tricky. If you go here and you export, for example, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to click the Save Final Images under File, right? I'm going to click on it, so save it. And then there is this Save Images options here. I'm going to disable the color management, so I'm going to disable it completely. And here in the View Transform, I'm going to match the View Transform I have in there, right? And I'm not going to use the Apply Gamma Exposure because this is only if you're tweaking things around here, which you can. I mean, like you can cheat things in here, you know, it's like you can bring things, you know. So if you want to apply whatever adjustments you did with those slides, then in this case, you're going to have to turn on the Apply Gamma adjustments. In this case, I'm not going to use it. Once you have those settings, you're going to export this, save this file here. If you choose to save it as extension PNG or JPEG, for example, you should get pretty much like a one-to-one representation of whatever you see here, right? But let's say if you want to tweak this coloring here later on, you want to make sure you're exporting this whole thing as an EXR. So if I render like an EXR, let's try render 1, it's going to be like render 2A here. So it's actually auto selects, right? So if you put an extension there, it recognizes that's the extension you want and it saves in that format. So make sure you put the right extension, so EXR. So if I save this now, and I put this side by side with whatever you're gonna see in Photoshop, the Photoshop version is gonna look much, much brighter than this. And that's what the EXR has, you know, it's like it has this much broader gamma of colors that are possible, but it doesn't translate correctly, you know, it's like when you bring the Photoshop, there are like people who actually use like Nuke or some other softwares to actually color correct things in a way that actually looks exactly like that. There are even like some, I think, plugins that assure that everything happens perfectly, right? But I never found anything for Photoshop that it can actually convert this perfectly. You know, it's like that can bring something straight like from Maya into Photoshop that looks great. So what I did, I actually saved PNG. So basically, I saved the file as PNG, brought it to Photoshop, and then I matched it to the best of my ability using some color correction nodes. And basically, like I created this little, it's kind of like a script in here, which is basically automates the whole thing. And this is basically, I'm going to do like manually here. So you see what I did. But basically, if I switch to layers, so I create a layer here. So you click this little guy, and you're gonna do like a exposure, right? So you have an exposure layer in there, and I'm gonna copy those values in here that I have. So for the exposure, I'm using minus 0.7. And then for the offset, I'm using 0.04. And then for the gamma correction, I'm using 0.43. Oh, weird. It didn't match for some reason.
You're missing a zero, so
Oh, 0.7. Okay, 0.07. There you go. So this one here is the best match I could find, you know. So if you want to do something like this, you can actually create a new action script. So for example, like if I do from scratch here, let me just do this. So if you never done this before, I mean, like Photoshop is very powerful when you can create actions, right? So if you're not seeing actions, you can just go to your, my Photoshop menu is right here. Let me get this one.
Chris, have you tried pulling it into Camera Raw?
Into Camera Raw, yes. Camera Raw is really cool for controlling stuff. But at the same time, it's like I think like I did this before I got too much into Camera Raw, and then it actually works really nicely, you know. But definitely, like you can use Camera Raw, whatever you can do to match, you know, it's like perfectly. But those values I'm giving you basically like give you like it's almost completely one-to-one. If you do like a super contrast, like add some a node to actually contrast things quite a lot to see the difference between them, you're still gonna see differences, but it's very minor to the naked eye, you know. So the way it works is basically like this. In Photoshop, you have your window menu. You can have actions in there, so you turn it on actions. So you're gonna have something like this. And then once you have actions, you can create a little new folder here if you want to separate this from the rest of the actions. And you can call, for example, like Arnold, something like that. And then inside of this folder now, you can create any actions you want. So I'm going to click this plus, and I'm just going to call it, for example, aces to PS, something like that. So now you see when I created it, it started recording straight away, right? So now everything I do in here is going to be recorded in a sequence. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the layers. I'm going to add that little node. Oops. Oh, I just did it wrong. I'm going to show you anyway. Click this one here. So I'm going to go exposure, right? Same node that we created before. I'm going to double click it to be able to, where is it? It changed position here. It's somewhere. Let's see. Oh, it's right here. It's the other screen, sorry. So I have this guy right here. And then we're going to copy those values in there. So you're going to have like minus 0.007, right? Actually, minus 0.7. And then this one is going to be 0.004, no, 0.4 again. And then let's see, 0.004 minus 0.7, okay. And then 0.43. So something like this. And then once you convert in here, if you want to work with other softwares, for example, like the one I use, it's Alien Skin that I use like for my post-processing and stuff. Then you're going to have to convert this to 16 bits, right? So if you want to do this as part of the same script, you can do this right here. So you go to your image mode and then 16 bits. So you're going to convert from EXR to a 16-bit maps. And then you can say merge. And then here for the, instead of local adaptation, you're going to click exposure and gamma. And you're just going to click OK, right? And then you can stop your script. So basically I'm going to click the stop button. And remember my first mistake, the make layer that I don't need. I can just, anything that's, not necessary, you can just click and drag to the trash. So basically like now I have this script in here, right? So if you want to execute this script, you just click not the folder, but the name of the script itself. And then if you go to your history here, you can click the very top, and that's going to bring to the original model. So that's basically what I brought from Maya, right? So let's try that action that we just created here. So I'm going to click this one here at the top and just press play. And it did all those things for you, right? So in the future, I don't need to worry about doing this again. All the values should be okay in there. And then when you look at this compared to this file here, if I create, for example, like a PNG out of this, let's get, where is the Photoshop one? Let's just move this interface here away so I can actually see it. And let's move all this crap away here too. So if I save a PNG and I put like side by side, it's pretty much like it's a spot on comparison. I did this in the past, you know, it should be pretty spot on. Sometimes when you have like them in different sides of the monitor, it looks like this looks bright, but then sometimes you reverse and it looks like, you know, that one is bright now. It's this weird impression, at least like with my eyes, that's what happens. But they should be really, really close to each other, you know. So that's, you know, if you are trying to match the colors and still use the AXR, that's a way to do, you know, using those values that I just passed to you guys. Again, like it should be really, really close, you know. It's like if there's a difference, it should be pretty minor. But yeah, that's what I have for you guys today. And then tomorrow we're going to be building some eyes and then hopefully adding some soul to him. Yeah. All right, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
no problem. All right. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Chris,
No
Thank you,
problem.
sir.
hey,
No
Chris,
problem.
before you
Take care.
go,
Thank you, Chris.
Chris.
Bye.
uh,
Thanks, guys.